Chapter 91. Murphy was recording a show at Xiangbei Station, but Mo Xiaowan didn't go with her. She had to go back to Tianmei's manager's monthly meeting. Although she didn't have to attend this meeting, for Murphy's new album, Mo Xiaowan still attended. In this management company, although there were 40 to 50 singers and actors signed with more than 20 managers, in reality, the power wasn't distributed at all. Whether it was a big or small matter, it was still Sister Ling who had the final say. Looking at the process of this meeting, it could be seen that Sister Ling was introducing, analyzing and assigning tasks. Okay, today's meeting is about to end here. Does anyone have anything to add? Niu Meiling closed her notebook and clapped her hands. Mo Xiaowan had been waiting for this sentence. She quickly raised her hand and stood up. Sister Ling, I heard your work arrangements for this month and the general plan for the second half of the year. Why didn't I see anything about our Murphy's new album? As soon as her voice fell, the room buzzed with discussion. The other managers whispered to each other and looked at Mo Xiaowan with surprise, disdain and even anger. Mo Xiaowan could vaguely hear some of it. No way, didn't she just release an album not long ago? She's going to release it again. Her last album's results weren't good. She should reflect on it. It's too much. She's bullying us just because she's signed. Our family's Yaya has been waiting in line for several years, but there's no plan for her to release an album. She only sings a few old songs every year. That's right. At the beginning of the year, it was the same for us. We said we could prepare a new album, but when she came back and said she wanted to make a comeback, the whole company wanted to collect songs for her. Her singing wasn't that good and she even delayed other people's work. Mo Xiaowan could only pretend not to hear these complaints. This couldn't be helped. The entertainment industry was a cruel world where only the fittest survived. Fairness had to be matched with strength. Murphy, as the top singer and empress, as Tianmei's biggest star, naturally had the best resources and the highest priority in the company. In other words, the reason why the company was willing to invest in Mo was because they knew that Mo could bring them more benefits. Of course, no one would have thought that Murphy's return album was released too hastily, which led to the effect of the current plummeting popularity. If it wasn't for the fact that Murphy had fallen from grace and Mo Xiaowan had made such a request in the past, those little agents wouldn't have dared to criticize her in front of her. However, this time Niu Meiling didn't stop them. Instead, she waited for the discussion to die down a little before kindly saying to Mo Xiaowan, "Murphy is going to release a new album now? Isn't this a little too hasty?" Niu Meiling was worthy of being one of the top agents in the industry. When facing her, Mo Xiaowan felt a lot of pressure. She could only bite the bullet and say, "Ling Jia, I submitted an application to you the day before yesterday. Although Murphy's new album isn't as urgent as before, we should start collecting songs now, right?" "Oh, I saw your application." Niu Meiling narrowed her eyes and said to Mo Xiaowan, "You also mentioned that you already have 2 songs." Mo Xiaowan quickly nodded and said, "Yes, it's a song written by Murphy's fans. Murphy thinks it's pretty good and wants to include it in her future album." For some reason, Mo Xiaowan vaguely felt that she shouldn't mention the name Mu Xiang to Niu Meiling, so she used the name of a fan. The other agents all sneered. They talked without restraint. Fans have the ability to write songs? I'm afraid Murphy's head is spinning. In their opinion, Murphy must have lost her mind. Otherwise, why would she think that a fan's song could be arranged in her album? If fans had professional abilities, would they still be called fans? They would definitely release another album that no one would buy. "Sister Ling, you can't mess around with her." Jian Chua, one of the more influential agents in the company, stood up and said angrily, "Our Zhenjian is finally preparing for a new album. You have to help her collect some good songs. You can't always accommodate Murphy. What's the meaning of this?" Zhenjian's name was Zhen Muqin. She was Tianmei's number 3 female star. She hadn't released a new album in 2 years, but because she was a dual star, she made a name for herself with a TV series she filmed last year. Recently, she frequently appeared on big-name variety shows and was developing well. "Chua, sit down first. Don't be impatient." Niu Meiling smiled and patted her hand. Zhenjian's performance this year is obvious to all. We have to support this hard-working child, so don't worry. As for Murphy, Xiaowan, you have to persuade her. Niu Meiling's voice was still as kind, but Mo Xiaowan felt that it was harsh. Murphy has just suffered a failure and is anxious to start over. We can understand this feeling, but the new album can't be rushed. Slow work produces fine work. Mo Xiaowan couldn't help but retort. Sister Ling, we can collect songs now. Murphy can wait. It won't be too late for us to release a new album after we collect 12 songs. But the problem is that the company doesn't have that many resources right now. Niu Meiling's tone became serious, and the entire conference room suddenly fell silent. You heard it too. Zhenjian is going to release a new album. Zhu Jie is also preparing his new album. And this and that are all waiting for their new songs. The company can't just do nothing and collect songs for Murphy alone, right? At this moment, although the conference room was silent, almost everyone had a "that's right" look in their eyes. Mo Xiaowan was a little speechless. She could actually understand what others were thinking, but the problem was that she was Murphy's agent and had to stand by Murphy's side. If Murphy opened a studio alone, how convenient would that be? Although the price to pay for songs is higher, at least there's freedom. And with Mu Ziong around, there shouldn't be too much of a problem with collecting songs, right? Mo Xiaowan thought to herself. That's right. Mu Ziong. Mo Xiaowan raised her head and said to Niu Meiling, Sister Ling, if we collect enough songs ourselves, can the company bring forward Murphy's new album plan? Niu Meiling frowned. She was very wary of such a situation. She always had the feeling that the stars under her had grown wings and wanted to go solo. But she still smiled and asked, Is that so? Where are you going to collect songs? We're Murphy's fans. Mo Xiaowan said. Suddenly everyone, including Niu Meiling, showed a mocking expression. Collecting songs from fans, to think she could even think of that. If you can collect 12 songs, the company promises to immediately arrange for Murphy to release an album. Niu Meiling agreed. Niu Meiling had her own plans. She wanted to grind Murphy's temper and make Murphy suffer a little more. Murphy's contract was entering the last year, but Niu Meiling didn't want to sign such a lucrative contract with Murphy. If she could make Murphy recognize reality, then there would be a lot of room for manipulation in the future. Chapter 92. Mo Xiaowan wasn't as innocent as Murphy. She could vaguely see Niu Meiling's intentions, but she still held back her anger and didn't argue with the big boss. She didn't complain to Murphy until Murphy came back from Xiangbei Station. Sister Fei, I think we should wait until the contract is over and jump ship, or open our own studio. Mo Xiaowan said angrily. This Tianmei person doesn't put us in her eyes at all. Sister Ling also wants to suppress us. Murphy was silent for a while, then shook her head and said, Sister Ling has done me a favor. Unless they go too far, I can't let her down. In fact, Murphy still had something in her heart that she didn't say out loud. Even if I open my own studio, I won't betray Sister Ling and jump ship to another agency. When Mo Xiaowan mentioned the idea of opening her own studio, Mo Fei was a little tempted. However, her original intention was different from Mo Xiaojuan's. Mo Xiaowan wanted more freedom and arranged the album according to Murphy's own ideas. Murphy also wanted more freedom, but she wanted to arrange the schedule according to her own ideas and reduce the commercial performances and program recordings that she didn't want to participate in. However, Mo Fei hadn't made up her mind yet. After all, it was Sister Ling who nurtured her. In the past, when Sister Ling was her manager, she really took care of her like a mother taking care of her daughter. She also helped Mo Fei avoid many detours. This included when Yang Yi beat up the rich second generation and stole his car to escape with Murphy. It was Sister Ling who came forward and spent a lot of favors to suppress the matter so that the rich second generation would no longer pursue it. Murphy still remembered the kindness of these years. She wanted to repay Sister Ling, so she chose to come back and make a comeback in Sister Ling's company. This is not too much, Mo Xiaowan said unhappily. Zhen Zhen and her agent are riding on top of our heads, and Sister Ling still doesn't speak up for us. Sister, look clearly. Sister Ling is no longer the Sister Ling from before. That's because I really didn't perform well enough on my comeback album. Murphy sighed. My grades are bad. No wonder Sister Ling wants me to calm down and settle down, right? But don't you want to release a new album? Right now, the company doesn't have any plans to buy any songs for you. How long do we have to wait to line up like everyone else? Mo Xiaowan asked. Murphy fell silent. Mo Xiaojuan's words had hit the nail on the head. Murphy wanted to make a hit record. If she wanted to return to the top, she needed the support of the company. Plus, Murphy didn't want to wait. Mo Xiaowan saw that Murphy was silent. She smiled and said, Sister, luckily I was smart. I helped you get a promise from Sister Ling. As long as we get 12 songs, she will do her best to help us release an album. Murphy was speechless. Where are you going to find 12 songs? Find Mu Xiang. Mo Xiaowan said proudly. He's such an excellent songwriter, so he must have a lot of good songs. Plus, he's your admirer. Writing songs for you and helping you release an album. How wonderful is that? But Mo Fei was embarrassed and annoyed. Xiaowan, how can you do this? Her relationship with Yang Yi was stable, even if there were some arguments. But even if she and Yang Yi were in a lukewarm state, Murphy had never thought of accepting other people's pursuit. After all, Yang Yi was still Shi's father, wasn't he? Plus, her heart was gradually getting closer to Yang Yi. It was even harder for others to enter her heart. Murphy had always felt guilty about accepting songs written by her admirer. But Murphy liked both songs very much, so she couldn't make up her mind to reject them. But now Mo Xiaowan said that she wanted to continue asking Mu Xiang for songs. It wasn't just 1 or 2 songs but 10 songs. Murphy couldn't afford to owe him this favor. No, I don't agree to this. I can't ask him for more songs. Murphy rejected Mo Xiaojuan's suggestion. I knew you wouldn't agree. Mo Xiaowan proudly pulled Murphy to her desk and opened an email. So I'll act first and report later. In the email, Mo Xiaowan used Murphy's name to send an email to Mu Xiang. Of course, Mo Xiaowan didn't use a very flattering tone, nor did she use explicit words. She simply described her current situation and asked Mu Xiang if he had any new songs for her. Mu Xiang had already replied. He didn't say yes or no. He only said, "Give me some time. There's still hope." Mo Xiaowan said happily. But she felt a bone-chilling cold. She turned her head and saw Murphy looking at her with cold eyes. Mo Xiaowan shivered. She couldn't smile anymore and felt very awkward. Mo Xiaowan, Murphy said word by word. Who gave you the right? You sent him an email without my permission. Did I say I was asking for it? The new album can't be released now, but I can wait. But I won't allow you to ask him for songs. Because Mu Xiang was a man. Murphy didn't want to have too deep of an entanglement with him. She also didn't want this to affect her relationship with Shi's father because of this matter. Mo Xiaowan panicked. Although she knew that Murphy, as her cousin, wouldn't fire her, she was still a little anxious when faced with Murphy's anger for the first time. Sis, I was wrong. This time I didn't think it through. Mo Xiaowan lowered her head. Her voice was weak and she felt wronged. Next time I'll definitely do things according to your request. I won't act first and report later. Murphy bit her lower lip. The coldness on her face dissipated slightly. After a while she said, "Send him another email to clarify." Mo Xiaowan plucked up her courage and said, "Sis, there's no need for that, right? It wasn't easy for us to get Mu Xiang to write songs for us. Think about it, Mu Xiang is so good. Who knows, maybe he can write better songs than the previous 2. Murphy was stunned for a moment. This time, she wasn't as determined as before. Mo Xiaowan saw that there was hope, so she quickly said, "How about this, we don't need to clarify in the email. What I said was the truth. But if we have the chance to meet Mu Xiang in the future, I'll apologize to him." Right now we can't pin all our hopes on Mu Xiong. I'll go to the Copyright Association's website and pick new songs one by one. It's okay even if it's a little tiring. I don't believe that we can't get 12 songs. Mo Xiaowan patted her chest and said. This method was the stupidest. After all, in the environment where copyright protection was very good, there were many domestic songwriters. Every day, thousands of songwriters were uploaded and recorded on the Copyright Association's website, but most of them were terrible songs. Trying to find a good song among so many songs was like looking for a needle in a haystack. Moreover, they might have to compete with many companies in the process. If they were slow, they might not get it. But even if it was the stupidest method, it was the only way for independent musicians. Murphy sighed and said, "Don't do it again. I'll pick with you." Chapter 94. Yang Yi replied to Mo Xiaowan that he needed time to prepare the songs. This was not a perfunctory reply, nor was it because Yang Yi really could not find a suitable song for Murphy. On the contrary, Yang Yi did not have too many songs in his hands. He could take out almost all of the popular songs from his previous life, enough for Murphy to produce several albums. However, Murphy basically wanted to sing songs with a female voice. Yang Yi had not played those songs in his previous life, so naturally, he could not take out the music score directly. Fortunately, his memories from his previous life were very clear. It was like extracting audio files from a hard drive. As long as it was a song that he had listened to once, he would not forget it. Therefore, he only needed to dig out the music score. Of course, this was quite a lot of work because Yang Yi did not want to dig out the simplified music score, but the overall music score that had been modified and perfected by professional musicians and producers. Could be said that he could use it immediately. Fortunately, as a fan of classical music in his previous life, Yang Yi could play the 3 major musical instruments. Naturally, his ability to dig out the music score was not to be doubted. As long as it was not an unpopular instrument like the guzheng or sun, Yang Yi could still dig out the complete music score. Even if it was the drums and the flute, Yang Yi knew a little about them. After Murphy finished recording the show, she did not go home. Instead, she avoided the media and paparazzi and quietly came to Yang Yi's residence like she did before she went out to run her jobs. She did not know if she was obsessed with this place, or if it was just like what she had explained to Yang Yi. "I'm here to celebrate Shishi's birthday with you." Yang Yi lived in a small building that was next to a mountain and a river. There were willows in front of the door, and there were also clusters of flowers. In the morning, they could see the morning sun dispersing the mist, and in the evening, they could see the river reflecting the sunset. The scenery was intoxicating. Although it was the holidays and there were few people, didn't Murphy like this kind of tranquility? No one would disturb them, and no one would bump into them. They could let down their guard and take a real vacation. What's more, Murphy was stubborn and refused to admit it. Living in this small house, there was his daughter's cheerful laughter and his occasional bickering. Although it was noisy, it was warm and cozy. This was the feeling of home. One day before Shishi's birthday, Murphy and Yang Yi took action. The two of them avoided Shishi and went to the balcony to discuss while the little girl was watching TV. "Where do you plan to set it up?" "It's in the coffee shop on the first floor. I've been closed for a few days, so I left it for Shishi. The first floor is full of transparent glass. Don't be afraid. There's basically no one here at night. Besides, if we did it in the living room on the second floor, wouldn't Shishi have found out?" "All right then, where's the cake?" "I've already ordered the cake. Tomorrow night help me stall Shishi. I'll ask the cake shop to send it over. It'll be sent to the first floor first. Last time you told me on the phone that you spent tens of thousands to order the cake. I don't have a choice. I want to make a snow castle for Shishi that she wants to see the most. I even specially gave the design to the cake shop. But it's very complicated to make, and they have to make a few samples to try first. After all this, the cost is very high." "All right, according to what you said, it's not very expensive. But do you have enough money?" Murphy was still a little worried about Yang Yi's wallet. "Hey, don't underestimate me. After all, my novel earns millions a month. It's more than you working hard to make money from commercial performances, okay? Don't mention my sad things. Otherwise, I'll be angry again. Murphy said angrily. No matter how much money you make, I still have to work. Music is my dream. This was the first time Murphy talked about this issue with Yang-e openly. But surprisingly, Yang-e was not as stubborn as before. On the contrary, Yang-e was very natural and easygoing. Course, doing what you like to do makes life worthwhile, right? Yang-e smiled faintly. I support you. Murphy looked at Yang-e in disbelief, as if she was looking at a stranger. Wait a minute. Is this still Yang-e? He actually supports me. He supports my music career. Murphy did not even care about being moved. First, she was confused by Yang-e's completely different views from before. One had to know that Yang-e had strongly opposed it in the past. Almost every time Murphy met him, the two of them would quarrel. Yang-e's super traditional view of whether you're rich or poor, I don't want you to appear in public and sing for others, really made Murphy collapse. P.S. Everyone may have forgotten that this conflict of views was mentioned at the beginning of the book, but everyone chose to ignore it. This was the reason why Murphy found it difficult to accept Yang-e before. It was not because of his education, wealth, or status. He felt that Murphy cared about his education, wealth, and status. It was just a misunderstanding of the original Yang-e. Then, this bigoted view was deeply ingrained in his memory and affected the current Yang-e. Let's mention it again here. I hope everyone can distinguish the reality and misunderstanding described by Xiao Han in the conflict. Yang-e looked at Murphy's eyes and realized that he was in danger of being exposed. He quickly laughed twice and said, Let's not talk about this. Have you prepared a birthday present for Shishi? Her daughter was still more important. Murphy pulled back her mind from the doubts just now. She smiled and said, Of course, I asked Xiaowan to help me buy it. It's already here. What did you prepare? Yang-e asked. Murphy was vigilant. She looked at Yang-e suspiciously and said, Why are you asking this? Do you want to see what my present is like and then buy a more expensive one for yourself? Yang-e did have some thoughts of comparison. He really hoped that she would like his present more. After all, he had carefully prepared for a long time. He could not let Murphy steal the limelight. After being exposed by Murphy, Yang-e smiled awkwardly and said, How can it be? My present wasn't bought. How can it be measured by money? She lived with me for 4 years. As the saying goes, no one knows a daughter better than a mother. I know what she likes the most. Murphy raised her chin a little proudly, revealing her white and slender jade neck. But she's the happiest when she's with me. Yang-e said, unconvinced. But women know women best. Murphy took off her indifferent disguise. In front of Yang-e, she looked more and more like a little girl. She pouted angrily and said, If you don't believe me, let's compete tomorrow and see whose present she likes the most. Let's compete. What will you do if you lose? Yang-e was interested. You will lose. Murphy snorted and said, If we lose, we have to promise each other one thing, okay? Unconditional. Oh. Yang-e did not think that he would lose. He reached out his hand confidently. Yang-e wanted to shake hands and bump shoulders with Murphy to signal the start of the bet. In the end, Murphy did not understand. She looked at Yang-e with vigilance. What are you doing? Yang-e awkwardly retracted his hand and scratched his head. Nothing, my head is itchy. Chapter 95. If there was someone standing in front of Yang-e, he would definitely punch that person until his own mother couldn't recognize him. F***ck Yang-e, what bad things have you done? In the afternoon, when Yang-e was busy decorating the venue for his daughter's birthday party, the boss of Sahara, Mr. Fu Jun, who often had a wild imagination, called. He started to make a fuss. The soldiers are here. These words scared Yang Yi so much that he almost wanted to pack up his things and run away with his daughter and Mo Fei. Although Yang Yi's body was that of a retired soldier, his soul was that of a transmigrated killer. When the soldiers came, Yang Yi's first reaction was to be surrounded. Just like in his previous life, he was hunted down by the NSA, MI5, FSB, and DGSE. If he didn't run fast enough, he would have been dead. But obviously this was a misunderstanding. In this life Yang Yi knew his place. The only illegal thing he did was to expose Luo Jinrong. Yang Yi had cleaned up his tracks, so no one would be able to trace it back to him. Plus, no one would be able to find trouble with him. Haha, are you scared? Relax, I'm just joking with you. Fu Jun, this annoying guy, exaggerated the truth, lied about the military situation, and laughed proudly. What is it? If you have something to say, say it. Yang Yi really wanted to beat someone up. Unfortunately, Fu Jun was not in front of him. He could only recite the great compassion mantra. Mercy, mercy, violence is useless. It goes against the harmony of heaven, hurts the liver, and hurts the kidneys. Revenge is a dish best served cold. 10 years later, I'll put him in a gunny sack and beat him up. Someone from the army is here. I'm not lying to you about this. Fu Jun was almost 40 years old, but he still acted like a young man. He was very trendy and his mind was very jumpy. But it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing, a very good thing. It turned out that the higher-ups in the army had sent someone to get the address of Sahara through Chi Yu. Then, they came to urge the publishing house to print the physical books as soon as possible. They have included your 2 books in the recommended reading list for all soldiers in the army this year. Although not everyone will have a copy, the purchasing department has already placed a huge order for 2 million copies each. Fu Jun then revealed his excitement. Yang Yi, do you know that you're famous? 2 million copies sold before the book was even released. 2 million copies in this world's physical book sales record was only a small number. After all, to be in the top 100 sales of Chinese books, at least tens of millions of copies. But before it even went on sale, there were already 2 million copies. This result could be said to be a pleasant surprise. With a good start, Fu Jun began to look forward to what kind of explosive results it would have when it was actually released. So what did you do? Why would the army give us such a big order? Fu Jun was dying of curiosity. But Yang was young of spi. He was at a loss and replied helplessly. You're asking me? Who am I supposed to ask? Could it be that his identity was exposed? Yang Yi's name was seen by the previous leaders of the army, so they gave him compensation. Course not. A few days ago, after Qiu Xiaotong explained the misunderstanding of Yang Yi is a bastard, she recommended drawing sword to her grandfather. The old man could not read the computer, so Qiu Xiaotong asked the guards to print it out for her grandfather. Although General Qiu Weigua did not participate in the war against the Japanese, he was born in that era of war. His father and grandfather were also soldiers and officers who sacrificed themselves in those wars. Although the characters and plot described in Drawing Sword were fictional, the fiction was very realistic. Qiu Weigua's eyes were filled with tears and his blood was boiling. He could not help but take out the military knife he had treasured before, pulled it out shakily and roared, "Kill the Japanese!" His roar scared the guards, thinking that something serious had happened. After a moment of panic, they had to call the medical staff to check on the old man's body. They were afraid that his blood pressure would increase due to the excitement, which would be troublesome if something happened to his body. Qiu Weigua was not satisfied after reading it himself. He called his old comrades and some old generals of the Jiangnan military region to read it together and discuss the plot. They even discussed how they should fight the battle, and if his wife was captured, would he fire the cannons to blow up both the Japanese and his wife? Drawing Sword was not enough, so Qiu Xiaotong quickly recommended soldiers' assault to her grandfather. If the main rhythm of Drawing Sword was hot-blooded, then the main rhythm of soldiers' assault was inspirational. Inspirational did not have much effect on these generals who were used to hardships, but they saw the real life in the military camp and the growth of a real soldier in the book. This must be a book written by a retired veteran. It's so realistic. General Lu Pengju, the younger of the old generals and the current deputy commander of the Jiangnan military region, lamented. The first paragraph made my scalp tingle. It reminded me of when I first joined the army. General Lu Pengju was a typical example of a soldier who rose to become a general. He used to be a soldier in the countryside, but after joining the army, he was caught up in the frontier wars. He repeatedly made military achievements and rose through the ranks. Later, he entered the era of peace and became the deputy commander of the Jiangnan military region. Although his experience was different from Su Sandwa's, General Lu Pengju could understand the feelings and thoughts of the grassroots troops and frontline soldiers. Therefore, he could tell at a glance that the book was extraordinary. After all, it was revised by Yang Yi. Drawing sword should be promoted in the army. An old general about the same age as Qiu Weiguo waved his hand and suggested loudly, "We soldiers in peacetime lack the spirit of drawing our swords written in this book. No matter how strong the enemy is, no matter how good the enemy's equipment is, no matter how difficult the battle is, our troops must fight bravely. Soldier's Assault is also a good book. Don't abandon it, don't give up." Qiu Weiguo echoed. This slogan should be written in the notebook by our soldiers and memorized in their heads. No matter what, everyone must be united. This is the army that can win the war. The two old generals' proposal was approved by the others. Deputy Commander Lu Pengju, who liked the two books more and more, added fuel to the fire and submitted the proposal to capital. Therefore, Fu Jun's shock just now came about. Yang Yi was not interested in the news. It was good enough that he did not beat up Fu Jun. After hanging up the phone, he continued to decorate the scene of his daughter's birthday party. For him, this was the most important thing. However, Yang Yi did not care, but that did not mean that others did not care. Everyone in Sahara Publishing House was now rubbing their hands together and excitedly devoted themselves to the physical publishing project of Yang Yi's two books, striving for an early release. Faster, faster. Everyone get moving. Fu Jun was like a big bad guy waving a whip. He danced excitedly in the conference room and gave orders. Chapter 96. Papa is very strange today. He doesn't play with Shishi anymore. Shishi sat on the Persian carpet in the living room with her big bear, cat, baby in her arms. She raised her head for a while and secretly glanced at her mother, who was reading on the sofa like a cat with her legs crossed. Murphy was also like this at home. She liked to sit quietly and read a book, and then let Shishi play by herself. She was willing to accompany her daughter. If she had something to say to her, Murphy would put down the book and respond gently. However, it was really not her character to let her sit on the ground and play with toys like a child. P.S. It's understandable that many adults are the same in reality. But because of this, Shishi preferred to be with her father, because her father would play with her toys, make characters with the toys, and tell her vivid stories. Mom said that Papa is running a shop downstairs and doesn't let Shishi go to find Papa. Shishi muttered in her heart, and her little head was filled with thoughts. Then Papa must be secretly cooking delicious food downstairs and doesn't let Shishi eat it. Shishi is so sad. Shishi was going to be 4 years old today. She had her own thoughts and her own observation ability. Therefore, she knew that her father would not be very busy when he was running the shop, and he often accompanied Shishi to paint. How could he be so busy that he was afraid of being disturbed? Therefore, the little girl's imagination ran wild and she thought of other things. Shishi couldn't hold back her words. After muttering to herself for a while, she rolled her big bright eyes and got up from the carpet. She ran to Mom's hand and said, "Mom, I'm hungry." Murphy put down the book in her hand, gently stroked her daughter's hair and said softly, "Mom will make you a glass of milk to drink." Shishi shook her head and said, "No, I want to eat." Murphy had a headache. She stood up and went to the kitchen to open the refrigerator. Seeing that it was full of raw meat and vegetables, she was a little helpless. Why was this fridge different from hers? There were 2 refrigerators in Murphy's house. She often opened them to look for food in the living room. Auntie Zhu had prepared many of her favorite snacks, yogurt, and some fresh fruits for her. Those are all ready to eat. Now, all the food in Yang Yi's fridge was raw, which made Murphy, who had never done any household chores, dumbfounded. She knew what her mother was thinking. She pouted and said, "Papa put the delicious food in the cabinet next to the TV, but she doesn't want to eat those." "What do you want to eat?" Murphy asked, puzzled. She had long wanted to say, "I want to eat the delicious food that Papa makes." "Mom, let's go find Papa, okay?" He said he was downstairs. Murphy frowned. Just as she was thinking of an excuse to appease she, there was a movement outside. Murphy breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Yang Yi came back. Otherwise, he would be pestered to death by his daughter. Cece was the first to run out of the kitchen happily. Then, she jumped up with her slender legs and let her father catch her. Then he carried her up. She said with a little grievance, "Why did Papa ignore Cece in the afternoon?" Because Papa is doing something very big." Yang Yi threw a look at Murphy, indicating that she was ready. Murphy understood and quickly turned back to the master bedroom and took out the gift from her bag. "What is it?" She was immediately attracted by her father's words. She didn't complain and asked curiously, "This very big thing is?" Yang Yi deliberately delayed, waiting for Murphy to come out. "Aya, what is it?" She held her father's face with her white and tender hands. She tried to turn around and said, "I'm so anxious." "What is it?" "Papa will take you downstairs to see it." Yang Yi saw Murphy come out and said with a smile, "Okay, let's go see it." She anxiously twisted her little butt. "Can we go now?" Yang Yi asked Murphy. Murphy raised her hand, pushed a strand of hair that was blown by the wind back to her ear, and nodded. It was already 7 o'clock in the evening. Although there was still a faint afterglow of the setting sun on the horizon, the sky was already dark. The coffee was also dark like a black hole. She had already come down from her father's arms, but when she saw this, she was scared and squeezed to her father's feet. She even used a small hand to grab her father's trousers and said timidly, "Papa, I'm scared." "Don't be afraid, wait for Papa to go in and turn on the light. Then everything will be fine," Yang Yi said with a smile. But at this time, he suddenly felt that his shirt was tightened. He subconsciously turned his head and saw Mo Fei's face that was a little pale due to nervousness, and her left hand that was gently holding a small corner of his shirt. Yang Yi froze for a moment. She was also scared. Murphy happened to meet Yang Yi's eyes. She saw the surprise in Yang Yi's eyes. She blushed, quickly released her hand, and then turned her head to the side. "How old are you?" "Still scared." Yang Yi, this idiot said with a smile. "He really touched the pot that didn't boil." Murphy angrily rolled her eyes at Yang Yi, kicked him and said angrily, "Why aren't you opening the door?" She's little body was relatively low, so she didn't raise her head to look. She didn't know what was going on. She thought her father was talking about her. "How old are you?" She said in a daze. "I'm 3 years old, but it's so scary." Murphy and Yang Yi, who were fooling around, heard she's words and were stunned for a moment. Then they looked at each other and laughed. After opening the door, Yang Yi didn't press the light switch, but directly pushed the switch. Suddenly the coffee shop lit up like a flash bomb. Mo Fei and Cece were caught off guard for a moment, so they were both flashed. Took them a while to see clearly. "Wow!" She was the first to exclaim. The colorful lights in front of the bar were pulled up and flashed. If the incandescent lights were turned off later, it would look like little stars in the night sky. And on the line of the lights, there were strands of colorful ribbons hanging down, with triangular flags hanging in between. On the surrounding ground, Yang Yi used balloons of different colors to form a border. On one side there was a triangle of 4 balloons, and on the other side there was a cube of 8 balloons. Not only that, But the bar was also decorated with rainbow stickers and white balloons to form the shape of the sky. Inside the bar counter, there was a large white blackboard with the words, "Happy 4th birthday," Yongxi pasted on it with colored paper. "It's so beautiful." Of course, she couldn't fully understand these words, but she recognized her name and curiously ran over to take a closer look. "She, today is your 4th birthday." Murphy smiled. She walked over, took the little girl's little hand and said, "After tonight, you'll be 4 years old. Is this all for Shi's birthday?" Shi's mother used to celebrate her birthday for her, but her memory was a little blurry. She only remembered that there had never been such a big occasion. She asked excitedly, "Yes, your father prepared all day." Murphy turned to look at Yang Yi. In fact, it was also her first time seeing the results. She couldn't say that she was particularly shocked, but she could see Yang Yi's efforts in every aspect. Murphy's eyes also shone with a touched light. Chapter 97. Wait a minute. You have to wear this hat first. Yang Yi had indeed made a lot of preparations for Shi's birthday. After all, it was his first birthday party. He had even looked up some examples on the internet and learned how to decorate. At this moment, he seemed to have thought of something. He hurried to the nearby basket and picked up a few hats. She wants to wear this. Yang Yi's right hand was holding the artificial crown that he had bought with Shi the other day. Although it was cheap under the light, it was sparkling and looked like a real princess's crown. "Mom, is Shi pretty?" Shi smiled sweetly and let her father put the crown in her hair. She didn't dare to move her neck and could only turn her body. "Very pretty. My little princess. By the way, Yang Yi, I think we can take a picture here as a souvenir." "Keep it as a souvenir." Mo Fei patted Yang Yi's arm and said intimately, "Yes, but wait a minute." Yang Yi was still holding 2 conical hats in his left hand. He put one on first and then gestured to Murphy. "I don't want to wear it." Murphy laughed and took a step back, waving her hands. "How can this be? It's Shi's birthday. We have to wear it." Yang Yi blocked Murphy in front of the bar counter, leaving her with no way out. Then he helped Murphy put it on, hooked it with a rope, and hung it under Murphy's chin. This process was inevitable. Yang Yi's fingertips brushed across Mo Fei's chin, feeling the delicate texture of her skin, and looking at her blushing cheeks. She was as beautiful as a painting. He was so mesmerized that he forgot to retract his finger. Mo Fei also leaned against the bar counter in a daze, looking up at Yang Yi. At such a close distance, Murphy could almost feel Yang Yi's breath. At such a close distance, Murphy could almost feel Yang Yi's burning gaze. At such a close distance, Murphy forgot to hide. She looked at Yang Yi's chiseled face in a daze. "Why aren't you guys done yet? I can't wait any longer." It was Cece's voice that interrupted this moment of intimacy. Murphy was the first to react. She blushed and pushed Yang Yi away, pretending nothing had happened, and walked toward Shi. Yang Yi also shook his head and smiled. He also pretended nothing had happened. He went to the side, picked up the SLR camera he had bought before, and said loudly, Shi, Daddy is here to take photos for you." He took several photos. There was a photo of Shi alone with the yes sign that would never change. There was also a photo of Shi and Murphy together. "Yang Yi, come over and take photos with us." Murphy was having a good time with Shi just now. She smiled and waved at Yang Yi. "I have to take photos too." "There's no need, right?" Yang Yi scratched his head. "I still have to take photos for you guys." In fact, he was not very willing to take photos. His old ideas made him feel that as long as he took photos, it would be easy for his opponents to track him down. However, it seemed that he did not have to worry about this problem now. After all, he was no longer an assassin, but an ordinary person. "Come here," Murphy said. "You're my father. How can you say no? Come, let's take a photo together as a family of 3. Murphy almost blurted out the words, family of 3. Then she realized it and blushed. However, it was true. She was already 4 years old, and the three of them had never taken a photo together. Young Yi did not insist. He adjusted the camera's timer, then ran over to Murphy and hugged the little girl, who was smiling brightly in the middle. Click! The picture froze. Everyone had a smile on their faces. Even Young Yi and Murphy smiled naturally. They only hoped that this happiness would last forever. There was food on the bar. Not only were there freshly washed fruits, but there were also snacks baked and made by Young Yi himself. When Young Yi was fiddling with the camera and preparing to record the video with a tripod, Murphy held the little princess's hand and came over to try the food first. This is a cookie. Murphy picked one up and took a bite. She always ate elegantly. She only took a small bite, and her left hand was still under her chin, for fear that some residue would fall out. Oh, delicious! Mo-Fei liked Yang Yi's craftsmanship very much. This cookie was not only exquisitely made, but it also looked as good as the ones in the cake shop. Moreover, it was crispy and sweet, and the texture and taste were just right. Moreover, she liked the cranberries mixed in it. It was a little sour, but it was especially delicious. I want one too. She was anxious. She couldn't reach it unless she climbed onto the chair. However, Yang Yi had moved the chair away to set up the bar. Murphy smiled and handed one to the little girl. She said, "You can't eat too much. There will be more delicious food later. If you are full, you will regret it. There's more delicious food." She was eating happily and had a great appetite. However, after hearing her mother's words, she hesitated to finish the cookie. Of course, Yang Yi's snacks were not only cranberry cookies, but also colorful glutinous rice cakes. These glutinous rice cakes were very interesting. The green ones were mixed with green tea powder, the pink ones were strawberry flavored, and the yellow ones were mango flavored. Of course, they were filled with red bean paste. There was also a white one with a purple heart, purple potato filling. Just as Murphy and she were tasting the snacks, Yang Yi came over with his guitar. He even pretended to adjust the microphone and stand. Cough cough, hey hey. Murphy had seen the guitar hanging in Yang Yi's study upstairs, the brown beetle. Of course, she knew that this guitar was expensive and that it was left behind by the original landlord. She had always felt that the BB guitar was a pearl thrown into the swamp by Yang Yi. However, she had a better one, so she didn't ask Yang Yi for it. "What are you doing?" Mo-Fei looked at Yang Yi with amusement. She didn't know that Yang Yi knew how to play the guitar. Looking at Yang Yi's clumsy appearance while carrying the guitar, she couldn't help but laugh. "Well, I want to sing a song for Shi," Yang Yi said seriously. Okay. Shi clapped her little hands happily. She was so happy today. Her parents had prepared a birthday party for her, and her father was going to sing. In fact, Shi wasn't as surprised as her mother, because Yang Yi had sung "Let's Go" in front of Shi, so Shi was looking forward to it. Murphy was also a little curious. She wanted to know what Yang Yi, who didn't know anything about music and didn't care to understand, could sing. Moreover, it was a guitar song. Did he learn how to play the guitar? Murphy thought to herself. Then I'll start. Yang Yi put the microphone back on the stand, and then began to pull the strings of the guitar seriously. 565, 17. A light, simple rhythm sounded. Murphy paid attention to Yang Yi's right hand fingering. It still seemed a little stiff, but this simple repetition with only a few changes in the melody was indeed enough. But the way he pressed the strings with his left hand was not bad. He really did learn it. Chapter 98. Just when Murphy was secretly surprised that Yang Yi really learned how to play the guitar, Yang Yi had already started his singing. "Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you." When the first line was sung, Murphy was a little surprised. There was also a birthday song in this world, but it wasn't sung like this. The expression was a bit implicit, a bit like the kind of "I wish you good fortune and longevity" in the old Cantonese songs. It wasn't as straightforward as Yang Yi's. However, when she heard the second and third lines, Murphy was happy. This Yang Yi really. Why did he repeat the lyrics? Yes, the birthday song was so simple. There was only one line of lyrics, and then it was simply repeated. There was only a slight change in the tone. However, she liked this kind of simple repetition. Simplicity was in line with the acceptance of her age. For example, let it go. She had learned from her father for a long time, but she could only sing the sentence, let it go. Happy birthday. After repeating it a few times, she could clap her small hands and hum with a smile. Yang Yi's interest was piqued. She repeated it once and changed it to English lyrics. Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you. Murphy was stunned. It was really the first time she heard Yang Yi speak English. Although it was a simple repetition, Yang Yi's pronunciation was very clear. Especially the pronunciation of the theta in the middle of the phonetic symbol. Many people who learned it couldn't pronounce it correctly. He also knows English. Murphy felt that her understanding of Yang Yi had been greatly subverted today. She didn't doubt that Yang Yi didn't learn English. After all, Yang Yi dropped out of high school to join the army after less than a year. At least he had taken English classes in junior high school, right? But Murphy knew that with Yang Yi's disdainful attitude towards English and foreigners, he might have already forgotten how to speak English after so long. But now Yang Yi was singing an English song, which made Murphy confused. This series of surprises made Murphy forget to investigate who wrote this song. She had never heard it before. However, sometimes women would let their imaginations run wild, which was not necessarily a bad thing. Just like Murphy now, she found the answer for Yang Yi herself. Did he change for me? Naturally, she was too embarrassed to ask this question. However, when she thought about how Yang Yi's personality had become better and better over the past 2 months, Murphy's heart, which was no longer a young girl, started to pound like a little deer. On the other side, Yang Yi had already finished singing. She clapped her little hands happily and cheered. Nice! Yang Yi smiled and reached out to high-five his daughter to celebrate. Then he handed the guitar to Murphy. Although Murphy shyly avoided his gaze, Yang Yi did not mind. He smiled and said, "It's your turn." When it was Murphy's turn to sing, Murphy was not reserved. She graciously took the guitar, walked valiantly in front of the microphone and sat down. "I'll sing a birthday song too." Murphy looked at she and smiled. This is a song that Mom's mom used to sing on Mom's birthday. Now Mom is going to sing it for she. Murphy's string of Mom sounded like a jingle, which made Yang Yi suddenly think of the crosstalk routine in his previous life. A llama came from the east, a mute came from the west, and the llama carried 5 catties of tarts in his hand. In an instant, it was out of character. I like listening to Mom's songs. She smiled sweetly. Today was really great. Her parents were all around her, just like the stars surrounding the bright moon. After a beautiful melody, Murphy softly hummed Sad Face Piss. The lyrics below are partially rewritten by Lin Jiying's song, Birthday Present. Everyone, just look at the lyric. There's a bouquet of flowers in my heart for my beloved baby. Watered with tears, blooming with smiles, slowly growing up. Yang Yi's ears were very sharp. He looked at Murphy with some surprise. She was playing the guitar and singing with she with a smile. Murphy sang really well, but it was very different from her usual singing. She did not insist on using techniques to exaggerate her emotions. Instead, she truly revealed her warmth and sang very naturally. I'll accompany you through the sunshine and rain. I'll accompany you through the sadness and sweetness. Now I'll plant it in your heart forever. This kind of warm birthday song was not as straightforward as Yang Yi's singing. Yang Yi even believed that the lyrics were so implicit that she might not be able to understand them. But the melody was very nice. The little girl sat on the chair and smiled foolishly. She shook her head with her mother and clapped her hands to the beat. Everyone has a blessing. Every birthday has a gift. My dearest baby, I'll give you the most beautiful blessing and the best gift. No matter how many wishes you have, no matter how many dreams you have, my gift is my heart, accompanying you as you grow up." At the end of the song, Shishi happily jumped up from the chair. She heard the gift from the beginning to the end, so she cheered and asked, Then where's my birthday present?" Yang Yi was still immersed in Murphy's sweet singing. This was a rare warm singing style from Murphy until he saw Murphy take out her gift for Shishi. "Wait a minute. You can't open the gift yet." Yang Yi quickly stopped her. Sure enough, Yang Yi saw the disappointment in Murphy's eyes. Yang Yi gave her a look. "This is a good bet and you want to steal it." Murphy turned her head away in a fit of pique. "Why?" Shishi's face was full of joy. She reached out to take the gift but was stopped. She asked unhappily, "Why can't I open the gift?" "Because I still want to eat cake." Yang Yi responded quickly. "There's still cake." Shishi immediately threw the gift to the back of her mind. Her eyes lit up as she ran to her father and took his hand. "Where is it?" "Shishi wants to eat cake." "Dad will bring it over right away." Yang Yi comforted the little girl and then said to Murphy, "Murphy, turn off the lights." "Can you not turn off the lights? Shishi is scared." The little girl said at once. Murphy nodded fiercely. She was scared too. Yang Yi comforted her helplessly. "Not all the lights, just the headlights. These colorful lights are still on." Murphy still shook her head. "Forget it, I'll do it." Yang Yi went to the door and turned off the incandescent light. Then, his figure disappeared into the darkness. Although there were colorful lights flashing in front of the bar counter, like the shining stars in the night sky, and it was very beautiful, Mo Fei and Cece had no time to appreciate it. "I'm scared. Where's Papa?" She squeezed into her mother's arms and asked. Although Murphy was not too scared, she was also looking forward to Yang Yi's appearance. She asked her where her father went, but Murphy really did not know. She did not know where Yang Yi would get the cake, so now she could only wait. Suddenly, a few candlelight flickered in the darkness in front of them. Gradually, under the dim light of the colorful lights, Mo Fei and Cece both saw a big cake being pushed over on a trolley. Chapter 99. P.S. Warning of dog food ahead. "Happy birthday to you." Yang Yi hummed his birthday song again and slowly pushed the cake over. "It's here, it's here." Shishi was no longer afraid when she saw her father. She cheered and circled around her father, wanting to see what the big cake looked like. Murphy was worried that she would bump into something in the dark, so she quickly pulled her back. "Don't run around. Wait for your father to finish decorating." In the middle of the field, surrounded by flashing colored lights, Murphy and she finally saw what the cake looked like. It was indeed a custom-made cake that cost more than 10,000 yuan. The cake was made into the shape of a castle, and it was a castle on a mountain. It was made using the technique of reflection. Chocolate and fruit trees were buried in the cake, setting off the height of the castle. The lonely castle stood alone on the peak of the mountain. Murphy looked at the cake and frowned. "What does this mean? Why did you order a cake like this?" Murphy felt that a birthday cake shouldn't have such a dark theme. However, she shouted excitedly, "Sister Elsa! And Anna! And Snowbow!" Only she could understand the meaning of the lonely castle because Yang Yi had drawn a similar picture for her before. He told Shishi that when Elsa escaped from the crowd, she lived in a snow castle like this with Snowbow as her companion. The 4 candles that represented Shishi's 4th birthday were placed in very particular positions. 2 of them were placed on the castle, and the swaying candlelight illuminated the figure of Elsa, who was looking at her hometown from the window sill. The blue crystal-like dress told Shishi her identity. Although it couldn't be made with a cake, it was just a small wooden doll carved by Yang Yi and then colored by the cake shop chef with food coloring. Similarly, Anna, who was looking at the forest below the castle, was also a little wooden doll. The red cloak also revealed her identity. The other 2 candles were placed on her sleigh. On the other hand, Baby Snow was made entirely out of cream. The cake maker's skills were excellent, and Baby Snow's mischievous expression was vividly portrayed. Young-yi placed it at the entrance of the castle, just like how it would appear and welcome Anna in the story. It was supposed to be an Easter egg without any candles, but she still noticed it immediately. "Do you like this cake? Dad spent a lot of effort to get people to make it." Young-yi laughed and picked up the little girl so that she could have a better angle to observe. "I like it. This is Sister Elsa's castle." She was so happy that she didn't know how to express it. Murphy looked at the cake for a while, then looked at Young-yi and her daughter. She was very confused. Why would they like such a dark cake? Could it be that there was a story behind this that he didn't know? Sister Elsa, Anna. Murphy often heard she mention these names, but she didn't ask. Murphy made up her mind that when she had enough fun and went to bed at night, she would ask Young-yi about it. "Come on, make a wish first, then blow out the candles. After blowing out the candles, we can eat the cake," Young-yi said to she. The little girl still knew how to make a wish. She quickly hugged the cake with both hands, closed her eyes and whispered. Young-yi and Murphy didn't say anything. In this quiet environment, Shishi's voice clearly reached their ears. Shishi hopes that Papa and Mom can accompany Shishi all the time. Shishi doesn't want them to not be together. Murphy was stunned for a moment. She subconsciously raised her head and made eye contact with Young-yi, who was looking over. This time the two didn't avoid each other. They just stood quietly and looked at each other. In the darkness, it was difficult to see each other's expressions and thoughts. However, the candlelight reflected in their eyes was clearly visible. After she made her wish, she blew out the candles, and Young-yi turned on the incandescent lamp. Under the bright light, such a frozen-themed cake looked even more beautiful. "Don't you want to know what I made a wish?" Shishi's nose was smeared with some cream, probably from blowing out the candles. Murphy wiped her nose with a tissue, and the little girl said in a muffled voice, "A wish, it won't come true if you say it out loud," Murphy said intimately as she pinched the little girl's nose. "Then I'd better not say it." She quickly covered her mouth. She didn't know that her parents had already heard her wish. It was impossible for the three of them to finish such a big cake. Young-yi cut a few pieces from the edge and divided them into 3 portions, without touching the castle. Now she cared about the castle the most. She didn't let her father use the knife. She only allowed him to cut the forest below. However, these 3 portions were already enough. Cece was eating the most happily, but she was a small person. She had just eaten some desserts, so she couldn't eat much before she was full. However, her small head was still looking in the direction of the big cake. Young-yi had never had a strong interest in cake, so he simply ate a few mouthfuls. He saw that Murphy next to him had cut the cream off the cake and only ate the bread below. He smiled and said, "You don't want to eat cream and you still want to lose weight?" Murphy glared at Young-yi in annoyance. As a star, she always had to control her figure. Otherwise, how could she not like to eat cream? "I'm not making fun of you. I'm just saying later when we go up I'll get you something to eat. We'll eat together," Young-yi awkwardly explained. Murphy suddenly stretched out her hand and touched Young-yi's face. Young-yi's body stiffened. He didn't understand why Murphy, who had always kept a distance, would suddenly do such an intimate action. But he quickly understood. He reached out his hand and wiped his face. It was the greasy cream. At this moment, Amofei giggled and threw a playful glance at Young-yi, as if to show off. "Okay." Young-yi deliberately raised the plate in his hand. There was still some cake and cream. Of course, he wasn't stupid enough to throw it out. He deliberately wanted to scare Murphy. The latter exclaimed and hurriedly ran away. After confirming that Young-yi didn't pounce on her, she laughed from afar. Murphy's mood today was really good. She even laughed out loud. Perhaps, the amount of laughter today was almost comparable to the number of times she laughed in the past half a year. After fooling around, it was time to open the presents. "Young-yi, where's your present?" Murphy held her box. There were beautiful butterfly ribbons on it. She proudly shook it at Young-yi and said, Yang-yi was already prepared. He took out a long box from behind the bar. Although it didn't have any beautiful decorations, it was a rectangular box like Murphy's. Moreover, it was bigger than Murphy's. By a lot. You cheated. When Imo-fei saw this, she immediately pouted in annoyance. However, she didn't care about the expressions of her parents. She happily ran over and took the box from her parents' hands. Her father's box was slightly heavier. She dragged it to the middle and sat down. "These are all my presents," she said happily. Murphy glanced at her daughter. For some reason she suddenly said to Yang-yi, She is really easy to satisfy. When I was young I had a lot of presents for my birthday. They were from my family and classmates. They piled up in the house. But she was very happy when she asked for 2. When Yang-yi heard that, he was suddenly stunned. No one knew what he was thinking. Chapter 100. As mentioned earlier, Yang-yi had done a lot of preparation work before setting up this birthday party. For example, he had read the posts of mothers on online parenting forums. He had also spent money to consult some celebration companies that specialized in setting up parties. However, the answers he got had one thing in common. They had a lot of people to entertain. This was because other children had their own friends of the same age. However, she didn't. Yang-yi had brought her to play with her friends on campus. She was more willing to chase those naughty puppies. As for Brother Kai, he didn't appear again because of Yang-yi. Of course, Yang-yi could also invite the owners of the shops near the back door. They were acquainted with each other when they went in and out. However, because Yang-yi himself lacked a sense of security, it was difficult for him to communicate deeply with ordinary neighbors. He thought about it and gave up. Right, there was also Guozi. This little fatty was too simple. Although he was funny, he wasn't scheming. Moreover, Yang-yi admired talented people, so their relationship was quite good. Yang-yi originally wanted to invite Guozi to attend, but Murphy decided to come back to celebrate her daughter's birthday. Yang-yi dismissed the idea. After all, Murphy's identity was too special. However, no matter what, the family of 3 didn't seem to have many friends. Was it really good for she to continue growing like this? Yang-yi's thoughts were interrupted. Murphy was urging her daughter. She, quickly open this gift. See if Mom bought it for you. Do you like it? She couldn't wait. She quickly removed the butterfly ribbon and opened the box. Wow! She held the box in her left hand and covered her mouth with her right hand. She exclaimed happily. It's a beautiful ring. It's a bracelet, but it's made of silver. Pure silver. Murphy smiled. She took out the bracelet and opened the latch. Here, Mom will put it on for you. After she put it on, she happily twisted her left wrist and looked at the carvings on it. She said, It's very similar to Mom's. Murphy did have a silver bracelet that was passed down in her family. It was said that it had a long history, but she rarely wore it, especially during this period of time when she often went to commercial performances. The environment was chaotic, so she didn't want to wear it. Yang-yi had seen it once before, but he didn't expect that Murphy would buy a silver bracelet for she. Mom's is too big. When she grows up, Mom will give it to you. Murphy smiled. Yang-yi looked at his daughter's happy face and said sourly, Is it okay for such a young child to wear a bracelet? Murphy had already known that he would say this. She said calmly, The ancients said that silver has the effect of calming the 5 internal organs, calming the mind, curing palpitations, strengthening the bones, calming the heart, and brightening the eyes. It is more of a blessing and peace. Why can't I wear it? Yang-yi curled his lips. He still felt that it was too strange to give a silver bracelet as a birthday gift for such a young child. Well, go and open Papa's gift. See if you like Papa's gift more or Mom's gift more. Murphy looked at Yang-yi with a little pride. She didn't know about the bet between her parents. She carried her father's big box and said innocently, I like Mom's gift, but Papa's gift is the biggest. What should I do? Yes, what should I do? Which one should I choose? I'm waiting online. It's so urgent. Yang Yi's box was finally opened. Murphy also looked at it like a curious baby. She felt that she wanted to know what was inside more than Shishi. However, when Murphy saw it, she was dumbfounded. In the end, Cece crawled up from the ground. She hugged the wooden sword with her two small hands and lifted it up. That's right. Yang Yi's birthday gift for his daughter was a wooden sword. It was an ancient Chinese sword made according to Shishi's figure. Of course, it was a blunt wooden sword without a sharp edge. Murphy was not only dumbfounded but also speechless. She was completely speechless. She looked at Yang Yi as if she was looking at a fool. Her eyes seemed to say, "You still have the nerve to talk about me. What kind of birthday gift did you give? How can you give a sword to such a young child? Moreover, it's for a girl." Yang Yi suddenly realized that in order to make this sword, he spent a lot of effort, so he immediately took it from Shishi's hands and introduced it. This sword, in order to let Shishi hold it, I specially chose the best azalea wood, and then it was shaped, carved, and finally polished into its current shape. Shishi, look what's on this sword. Yang Yi pointed at the lines on the sword and smiled. Shishi was very cooperative. She curiously leaned on her father's arm and looked at it. Her eyes lit up and said, "It's a baby rabbit, and a baby bear and a little fox." Yes, Yang Yi also carved a lot of figures that Shishi liked on it. This was just one side. On the other side, he carved some female anime characters that Shishi liked from TV cartoons. A masculine sword instantly filled the heart of a young girl. At first, Murphy thought it was a joke, but when she heard it, her face was full of black lines. She was probably thinking, "I actually bet with a fool. Is this lowering my IQ?" However, the development of the story did not go as she thought. Shishi was still very interested in this sword, and looking at those cute carvings, she liked it even more. "And this?" Yang Yi chuckled and said, "Do you see these two card slots?" Yang Yi took down the two small wooden carvings of Elsa and Anna from the cake, wiped off the cream and coloring on them with a towel, and then gestured to Shishi. Unexpectedly, he pressed the two carvings into the two card slots on the hilt of the sword. "Wow, it's amazing." Shishi jumped up excitedly. "How can I take it down?" Yang Yi demonstrated. At this moment, Shishi was even more fond of it. "This is not fair. How can you do this?" Murphy pouted and said unhappily, "No, how can you give your daughter a sword? Why not?" Yang Yi had already planned it out. He said, "Because Shishi is a girl, I want her to learn some skills so that she can protect herself in the future. So, from tomorrow onwards, I will take Shishi to learn martial arts and swordsmanship every day." Why learn swordsmanship? Because Yang Yi himself was an expert in using swords and knives. His cold weapons were stronger than hot weapons. Teaching Shishi swordsmanship, Yang Yi naturally had the intention of letting his daughter inherit his legacy. Of course, when she first started learning, Yang Yi would only teach the little girl some simple moves to strengthen her body. In the future, when Shishi learned how to behave properly, he would teach her those lethal swordsmanship. Shishi is only 4 years old. Murphy originally wanted to say that Yang Yi was not playing by the rules. He actually used those cartoon characters that Shishi liked in exchange for a good impression. But now, her train of thought was slightly diverted by Yang Yi. So what if she is 4 years old? When I was 3 years old, I was forced to practice the horse stance by my grandfather. Yang Yi was talking about his predecessor. In his previous life, when he was 3 years old, the knife in his hand had already seen blood. But, she did not understand what her parents were arguing about. Like playing with a doll, she held the wooden sword and did not let go. Then she said weakly, "But she likes it very much." "Then which one do you like the most?" Yang Yi and Murphy asked almost at the same time. P.S. You didn't guess it, did you? After seeing Yang Yi's gift, do you feel like your worldview has collapsed? Haha. Chapter 101. It turned out that she might have martial arts, but she would never become a tough woman. After all, she still had a delicate girl's heart. Under the pressure of her father and mother, she had to make the final choice. The little girl looked at her right hand and left hand for a long time. On one hand, she looked at the beautiful silver bracelet, and on the other hand, she looked at the wooden sword. The pattern on the sword. Finally, like a little adult, she sighed and said, "It's so hard to choose, but I still like Mom's gift." After that, the little girl nervously held the wooden sword. Her two big eyes looked at her father pitifully. She weakly asked, "Papa, can she keep it? She also likes it very much." She didn't understand. She thought there was only one choice. "Yeah, I won." Murphy proudly raised her arms and cheered. She happily ran over and hugged She. She kissed the little girl and said, "Of course you can keep it. I believe your papa is not so tasteless." Yang Yi still had a look of disbelief. He actually lost. How could it be? How could she not like that wooden sword? Having a sword that belonged to oneself, that was the dream of every child. If one didn't have a dream, what was the difference between them and salted fish? She just said that she also likes my gift. It should be higher than your still likes. Yang Yi was not convinced and struggled. Murphy didn't take his trick. Instead, she proudly raised her chin and snorted, "If you agree to bet, you must accept defeat. Don't go back on your word." Yang Yi sighed, made up his mind and said, "Okay, if you agree to bet, you must accept defeat. Tell me, what do you want me to do?" Murphy put She down. The little girl found that her wooden sword was not confiscated. She was very happy. She quickly held it to the side and continued to look at it. Anyway, she didn't want her papa to see it, in case he went back on his word. "What should I ask you to do?" Murphy sat on the sofa with her hands supporting her chin on the table. Her slender fingers lightly tapped her smooth jade-like face before she suddenly retracted her hand and playfully blinked her eyes. "I haven't thought of it yet. Let's keep it in mind first and talk about it when I've thought of it." This birthday, she was very happy. Not only were her parents by her side, but she also had such beautiful decorations and such a beautiful and delicious cake. She also received gifts from her parents. Later, her mother said that it was a gift from Auntie Mo Shawan. She also liked it very much. "If only I could celebrate my birthday like this every day. Aya, why don't you make this your birthday wish?" The little fellow entered dreamland with a sweet smile. Murphy waited for her daughter to fall asleep before coming out of the bedroom. Today, she received too many surprises. Murphy had a lot of things to say to Yang Yi. Yang Yi was not in the study room but on the balcony. When Murphy brought She upstairs to take a bath, he stayed behind to clean up the mess. After all, people with obsessive-compulsive disorder had just finished cleaning up. After taking a bath, they came to the balcony to enjoy the breeze and admire the moon. By the way, the moon today is pretty good. Hearing Murphy's arrival, Yang Yi said softly without turning his head. Murphy sat down on the recliner next to Yang Yi. Now that there were only two people together, she became slightly more reserved. Her sitting posture was very ladylike. Fortunately, Murphy did not wear that indifferent expression on her face like before. She smiled silently and said, "Is this considered hitting on me?" "No, this is called sharing." Yang Yi immediately denied. "Why did she like the cake you made today so much?" Murphy asked the question that had been on her mind all night. "That's a scene from a fairy tale I told her." Yang Yi went back to the living room to get a cup, then poured some juice he squeezed and gestured to her. "Do you want a drink? Eat the cake, it's just right to relieve the grease." Murphy nodded. She took the cup and gently took a sip. Taste was not bad. It was sour and sweet, a bit like wine. She did not know how many fruits Yang Yi mixed together to make it. That story is more interesting. She has always liked the characters in it. Every day she fantasizes that she can also have ice magic. Yang Yi smiled. Murphy nodded gently. "You told she many stories, and she told me all of them. Did you make them up yourself? Heh, that's right. Young-yi admitted shamelessly. Murphy pursed her lips and said with some dissatisfaction, "That's not fair. You can make up your own stories. Shishi is sleeping with me now, and she said that the stories I tell are not good. When are you free? Organize your stories and write them out." Murphy thought of a way and said, "I want to read them and then tell Shishi. That way she can't tell the difference." Young-yi was a little speechless. However, looking at Murphy's cute and happy face, he still agreed. "Speaking of which, the guitar you played today is not bad. You put in the effort to learn." Murphy praised Young-yi, which was rare. Young-yi wanted this effect. He was gradually showing his ability to Murphy so that Murphy would not feel too abrupt. "How about singing? Is playing the guitar good?" Young-yi laughed. Murphy said mercilessly, "You can't sing. Your voice has not been trained. You can't control the song in this range. Then you sing very stiffly. You sing completely based on your own thoughts. You lack technique. Your breath is very long but you can't distribute it properly. You can't take in the right breath." In fact, Young-yi's singing was better than ordinary people. However, he was a professional singer after all. Murphy's standards were too high. She gave Young-yi a bad review as soon as he came up. Young-yi's ears were not worse than Murphy's when it came to the ability to appreciate music. However, it was difficult for ordinary people to hear how well he sang. Moreover, he did not receive professional training like Murphy did. Young-yi was not convinced, but he had to admit that what Murphy said was the truth. His singing was not necessarily better than Guazi's. Murphy realized that her evaluation was a bit excessive. She quickly said, "Of course, your singing is actually not bad. You just need to polish it a little. How about I teach you how to sing when I have time? Don't you have to work? You have to release a new album." Young-yi spilled the beans. This news was known by his other identity. Murphy did not notice. She sighed and said, "Not so soon. The new album is still receiving songs. Right now, there is a relatively good lyricist who said that he is my fan and wants to write songs for me. However, the workload is too much. I don't think it is likely to succeed. So, Shawan and I need to go to the Copyright Association's website to find a needle in a haystack." After talking about the depression in her heart, Murphy suddenly stopped. "Hey, why am I telling you this? You don't like to hear it." Young-yi secretly laughed. He said calmly, "It doesn't matter. I still believe in your fan. Since he promised something, he will definitely do it, right? I don't know. By the way, I found that you have changed a lot recently." Murphy suddenly turned her head and looked at Young-yi with burning eyes. Chapter 102. Under Murphy's gaze, Young-yi's back stiffened, and his expression froze. Luckily, the light outside the balcony was a little dim, so Murphy didn't see the smile on Young-yi's face. Could it be that she's still suspicious? Young-yi was nervous. Murphy continued, "You're writing novels, opening a coffee shop, playing the guitar, singing and even speaking English. Young-yi, I feel that you're different from before." The woman held her chin and looked at Young-yi with her watery eyes, which made Young-yi panic. "What should I do? Am I going to be found out? How should I explain?" However, Murphy wasn't as nervous as Young-yi. She saw that Young-yi didn't say anything, so she pursed her lips, plucked up her courage and asked, "So, you changed so much because of me? Did you learn to play the guitar and sing because of me?" It wasn't to that stage yet. Young-yi secretly let out a sigh of relief. He felt lucky that he wasn't being interrogated. However, regarding Murphy's question, Young-yi still had something to say. He shook his head vigorously. "No. There's no such thing. I don't believe you." Young-yi's original setting wasn't like Murphy's. He was still thinking about how to cover up his identity as Mu Xiang. So he explained, "I learned it when I was working for the past few years. I traveled extensively, learned how to cook in a restaurant, and learned how to play a musical instrument in a bar." Murphy was convinced. She pouted her rosy lips and said shamelessly, "I don't want to hear it, I don't want to hear it. You weren't like this in the past. It was only after I brought Shishi to meet you that you slowly changed." Yang Yi didn't want to explain too much on this topic. After all, he was really lying. The more he said, the more mistakes he would make. That Murphy, by the way, I wanted to discuss something with you today." Yang Yi stiffly changed the topic and said, "About Shishi going to kindergarten, I think your previous proposal is correct." Murphy angrily glared at Yang Yi. How could she not know that Yang Yi was deliberately avoiding the topic? But it had to be said that Yang Yi had succeeded. Murphy was very interested in the new topic he brought up. She happily said, "Really? Did you agree to let Shishi go to kindergarten?" "That's right." Yang Yi nodded. "However, I only agree with your idea of letting Shishi go to kindergarten. As for those interest courses, I still disagree." "Why? You want Shishi, a girl, to learn swordsmanship from you. Why can't Shishi learn to sing and play the piano?" Murphy was unhappy. Yang Yi had read a lot of parenting books, so he felt that he understood a lot of principles. He patiently explained to Murphy, "A child's childhood should be happy and carefree. It shouldn't be about constantly learning, so they don't have time to play. If Shishi learns kung fu from me, it will only take a little time. On one hand, she can exercise her body, and on the other hand, she won't be bullied in the future. This is a good thing." "Why isn't learning music a good thing?" Murphy asked. "Learning itself is good, but the heavy interest courses will make Shishi's childhood very depressed. I think it's not that she can't learn, but she has to allocate the time and learn some content that she likes. The most important thing is that she has to have fun," Yang Yi said. "As for the rest, it's not too late for her to learn slowly when she grows up." Murphy had to admit that Yang Yi was right. Because thinking about it carefully, she spent her childhood learning this and that, and it seemed that it was difficult for her to find any happiness in her memories. However, Murphy was still a little hesitant. "I don't want anything else, but I still have to learn to sing." "Then we'll let Shishi choose. As long as she likes it, we'll fully support it. As long as she doesn't like it, we won't force her." Yang Yi waved his hand generously. Murphy came back to her senses. She smiled softly and said, "You said you didn't change. Look, it's only been a few days, and you've changed again. Previously, you stubbornly said that you don't want Shishi to go to kindergarten." In response to this question, Yang Yi had something to say. "Don't you think that our birthday party tonight is too quiet? It's just me, you, and Shishi." Shouldn't be like this. I've heard that other people's birthday parties will invite a lot of children to participate. It's very lively. Murphy nodded gently. She used to celebrate her birthdays like this when she was a child, but she comforted him. "But you don't have to blame yourself too much. I think you did enough tonight. Although there weren't many people, it was very warm. Shishi was very happy, and so was I." "That's not what I meant. I just don't want Shishi to be like you and me, who are lonely and don't have any friends." Yang Yi waved his hand and said, "Who are you saying is lonely and doesn't have any friends?" Murphy was unhappy. "How many friends do you have? Count them." Yang Yi continued to dig his own grave. "I have friends. Xiaowan, my driver, and..." Murphy was a little flustered. She realized that Yang Yi was right. She really didn't have many friends. Although she knew a lot of people in the circle, she was always aloof and didn't want to participate in activities. She wasn't good at dealing with people. Moreover, she had a very high definition of the word friend. There were only a few people who could really be considered her friends. Xiaowan doesn't count. She's your relative. As for the driver, you don't even know his name. How can he be considered a friend? Yang Yi opened this bloody scar. Murphy looked at Yang Yi with shame and anger. Her heart was very uncomfortable. "What are you trying to say?" "Nothing. I mean, I don't want Shishi to repeat our mistakes." Yang Yi didn't take it seriously. He smiled and said, "Let her go to kindergarten. She can temporarily leave the arms of her parents. In this way, she can meet some children of the same age and have her own friends. Although Murphy didn't want to agree with Yang Yi's evaluation of her, she still agreed with Yang Yi's idea. She nodded gently. I'll find her a kindergarten. But in the future you have to send she to and from school. Sometimes even if I'm free it's not convenient. Course. Suddenly it was quiet. Both of them didn't say anything. It was a little quiet. Murphy looked at the clock in the living room. She yawned and stretched, revealing her slender and smooth waist. She said, "Okay, I'm going back to sleep. I have to go back to work tomorrow." Wait a minute. Yang Yi finally plucked up his courage and stopped Murphy. Well, on the 23rd, Chan Yijia will hold a concert in Zhongqing. I have a few tickets. Yang Yi was a little nervous, but he still said, I want to invite you to watch it together. He really wanted to invite a singer to watch the concert. Yang Yi actually dared to say such words. Unexpectedly, Murphy didn't care about this issue. She turned her back and Yang Yi couldn't see her expression. After a moment of silence, she asked in a low voice, Are you asking me out? Ahem, you can't say that. I just think that Chen Yijia's songs are very nice, and she will be there too. But if you think it's inconvenient, then forget it. Murphy's question was different from Yang Yi's idea. He couldn't use the words he had prepared. He could only improvise. Hey, why forget it? Murphy interrupted Yang Yi. Chapter 103. After busying himself with Shi's birthday, Yang Yi finally had some free time and could start preparing his new book. Changzi, who received an affirmative response, was so excited that tears flowed down his face. He could not wait to apply to his bosses. Since Yang Yi had changed the subject matter and they did not know what the content would be, the editorial department decided to carry out a small-scale publicity campaign first. For example, they would hang advertisements on the pages of Soldier's Assault and Drawing Sword. On July 20th, Yang Yi will return with his new book, Yu Zue. He'll accompany you through this hot summer vacation. Yang Yi's new book was coming. The fans of the two books had been looking forward to it for a long time. After the end of Drawing Sword, they had been asking for news about the new book, but they were disappointed again and again. A week later, the book review section had gradually quieted down. There was no longer the heated discussion from before. However, loyal fans like Mu Yuqing were still unwilling to leave. They came back every day to sign in and see if Yang Yi had started a new book. Finally, they received the news. Suddenly, the book review section of Drawing Sword and Soldier's Assault became lively again. After some fans spread the news, many fans gathered to discuss Yang Yi's new book. Yu Zue. The title of the book sounded strange. There's not even a brief introduction. Is Master Yang still writing military literature? Think so. If Yang Yi doesn't write military literature, what else can he write? But the name doesn't seem like the title of a military literature book. Yu Zue means the remaining crimes, the sins left behind. Sounds very dark. Come on, Drawing Sword doesn't seem like military literature. I thought it was a martial arts novel at first, haha. That's true. It's hard for ordinary people to understand Master Yang's brain circuit. I'm looking forward to it anyway. Looking forward to it +1. Looking forward to it plus 10,076. Mu Yuqing secretly saw the news when he was bored at work. He immediately ran to the bathroom, sat on the toilet, and made a long comment. Youngda, I don't care what you say, but can you please treat the protagonists kindly? Susan Duo fell off the bridge at the beginning of the movie. We all thought he was going to die. Thankfully, he was still alive in the ending even though he broke his leg. But when it came to Drawing Sword, Li Yunlong was such a good person. In the end, you actually let him die. Our readers' hearts were broken when we read this. Did it have to be so heart-wrenching? Please, Youngda, no matter what kind of novel you write, I will support you. But really, please be kind to your main character and please be kind to your readers. Mu Yuqing's book reviews were always on point, and he was quite famous in the circle of book fans. His post was immediately pushed up by many people. Give old Mu a compliment and beg Young-do not to abuse the protagonist, the heroine, and even the supporting roles, okay? Drawing sword really made my tears run dry. +1. +10076. In fact, the copyright department had been in contact with Sahara Publishing all this time. They had already received the release date and news of the two physical books, Soldier's Assault and Drawing Sword. Taking advantage of the rising popularity, they also arranged for publicity. The copyright department's power was no less than that of the editorial department. They directly posted an announcement at the top of the homepage. Pre-sales of physical books for Soldier's Assault and Drawing Sword. The editors of Sahara Publishing worked overtime to typeset and review the two books had been delivered to the printing plant for printing. They were expected to be officially released on August 1st. However, it was a little difficult to distribute the goods through offline channels. After all, Sahara Publishing's influence was small, and it was impossible to break the alliances of some large publishing houses. That was also the reason why Deputy Manager Huang asked Young-yi to consider it carefully. At present, Sahara Publishing only obtained the sales channels of state-run bookstores and some small bookstores. Chain bookstores with wider distribution and more sales, such as Love Reading, Book Bar, Book Pavilion and other channels, were not interested in books from a small publishing house like Sahara Publishing, let alone online novels. Of course, Sahara Publishing's efforts were not in vain. After all, state-run bookstores were the largest chain bookstores in the country. They were available in every city and had the largest distribution channel. However, the problem was that because state-run bookstores were state-run, the price of the books they sold was often 10% more expensive than other channels. That also led many readers to choose chain bookstores such as Love Reading, Book Bar, and Book Pavilion, which were more cost-effective. However, the advertisement Chi Yu posted was refreshing to the readers. Pre-sales. What does that mean? Didn't they say that the offline bookstores would be open on August 1st? Why is there such a thing as pre-sales? After clicking on the advertisement, Chi Yu announced the two sales channels provided by Sahara Publishing. The first was, of course, on August 1st. One could go to the state-run bookstores or the bookstores on the list below to buy the books. The second was the so-called pre-sales. Book fans who had been looking forward to buying two physical books had already decided to grit their teeth and go to the state-run bookstores to buy the books, even if it was a little more expensive. However, the pre-sales channel now gave them new hope. They could buy it online and the price was so much cheaper. Moreover, the online pre-sales delivery time was 2 days earlier. Was that for real? If it were not for the official advertisement, the book fans would have thought that they had been cheated. However, the Sahara online bookstore had a label certified by the Copyright Association, so it would not lie. The book fans began to study it curiously. After Yang Yi's suggestion, Fu Jun got someone to beautify the Sahara online bookstore's web interface to make it more user-friendly. At the same time, it also simplified the registration and book purchase process for customers. In the past, it was troublesome to buy books. They had to send money to the online bookstore through registered mail, and then tell the bookstore which books they wanted to buy by phone. They had to confirm it again and again. After Mu Yuqing saw the advertisement, he excitedly decided to be the first batch of customers. Anyway, the official advertisement was unlikely to lie. Even if it did, Mu Yuqing felt that his loss would not be too great. Moreover, if the operation was successful, Mu Yuqing might receive the book earlier than the book fans who went to the offline bookstore to buy it. Mu Yuqing excitedly clicked in. He found that he could browse and choose without registration when he entered the website in the early stages. He could even use the identity of a customer to add the books he wanted to the shopping cart. Only when he placed an order did he need to register or use an existing account to log in. Then, he filled in his personal information, delivery address, and payment account information. However, Mu Yuqing noticed that these information could be used again after filling in once. It reduced the tedious process of repeated registration. Amazing! Mu Yuqing was in the IT industry, so he quickly realized the convenience of this website. Of course, the payment was still a little troublesome. Mu Yuqing specially made a trip to the bank. Online payment in this world had not been developed yet, and there was no logistical support for payment on delivery. The Sahara online bookstore was still receiving payments through bank transfers. After the order was placed, the Sahara online bookstore would match the amount received and confirm the payment. Mu Yuqing took a screenshot of the entire process, covered his personal information, and posted a post in the book review section of the two books. I strongly recommend buying online. I'm already waiting at home for the two books to be delivered to my doorstep. The estimated delivery time is July 31st. It's really fast in Yongcheng, hee. Mu Yuqing was condemned by many book fans for his arrogance. However, under his call, more people flooded the Sahara online bookstore. There were even more people eating crabs. However, it was not that there was no other movement on the internet. Tai-Jun-net, who had been paying attention to the situation, immediately took action. Almost the next day, Tai-Jun-net posted an announcement announcing that one of their great authors, Bullet Scar, would upload a new book on July 20th. Furthermore, starting from August 1st, there would be signing events in bookstores in 8 major cities across the country. He would be competing with Yang Yi's Yu Zue, and the two published physical books. Bullet Scar was a veteran military writer, and he was also the founder of the Soldier King genre. His 3 completed novels had achieved good results, and even his physical books had good sales. It was said that his 3rd completed novel had sold close to 10 million physical books, and this was the sales record for military literature published on the Tai-Jun web. Obviously, Bullet Scar was a strong opponent that could not be underestimated. Yang Yi's fans were also worried about Yang Yi. However, after seeing Tai-Jun-net's provocation, Chi Yu did not react at all. No, it should be said that the editorial department was secretly laughing. This is interesting. Chapter 104. Shi, it's time to get up. Yang Yi drew the curtains, and the slightly dazzling morning sun shone in, covering the little girl's small but that was exposed outside the quilt. Of course, it was still wrapped in a pair of underwear and pajamas. Shi did not move. Obviously, such a small movement could not wake a sleeping baby up. Yang Yi smiled and walked over. He held the little girl's but with both hands and gently turned her over. Now, Cece couldn't fall asleep, and she couldn't even open her eyes because of the sun. She immediately pouted and turned over reluctantly. Oh no, I want to sleep. Every time she woke up, she would be a little grumpy. Moreover, Yang Yi had woken her up half an hour earlier today. Didn't you say yesterday that you wanted to practice martial arts? You also said that you wanted to see Dad practice swords. Yang Yi whispered in his daughter's ear. If you don't get up, the sun will be shining soon. After a while, 2 figures, one big and one small, slowly walked over from the grass in front of the flower bed in front of the coffee shop. She was wearing a cute pink exercise suit, which Yang Yi had specially ordered. It was different from the ordinary style. Because of the hot weather, the exercise suit was changed into shorts and short sleeves. The little girl wore it, revealing her slender arms and legs, which looked very valiant. At first, she was not willing to wear it. She wanted to wear a skirt, but when she saw that it was the same as her father's white exercise suit, the little girl liked it again. When they came out, Yang Yi was carrying 2 swords. One was a steel sword that he had made for himself. Of course, it was not sharpened yet. The other was Shi's small wooden sword. Shi was holding a bottle of milk and drinking it sweetly. She had not eaten breakfast in the morning because of the exercise suit, but she had to drink milk. Do you want to see Dad's martial arts? Yang Yi smiled at his daughter. She was still sucking on the straw from the children's milk bottle. She raised her little head and nodded vigorously. Then go under that tree. Remember, don't run around. Daddy's sword is very powerful. If you come over and brush it, your hair will fall off. Yang Yi tried to scare the young lady. Of course, she, who loved to look pretty, didn't dare to come over in order to protect her beautiful hair. She obediently stood under the tree and drank the milk. Then she opened her eyes wide and was unwilling to blink. She wanted to see her father's kung fu. Yang Yi stood in the middle of the field with his sword in reverse. There was no one around and it was very quiet. Only the rustling of the leaves in the wind could be heard. His expression became serious. Suddenly Yang Yi moved. His body was like a willow and his sword was like a leaf. From a slow and smooth beginning, it soon progressed to a perfect state of being attacked by a storm. Sometimes he waved, sometimes he spun, and sometimes he jumped. The silver light of the sword seemed to cut this space into pieces. Suddenly the storm stopped, the clouds disappeared, and the rain stopped. Yang Yi stood in the same place with his sword in hand as if nothing had happened. The wind was still lazily blowing the leaves, making the light and shadow on the field sway. "How is it?" Yang Yi smiled and walked towards his daughter. In fact, he didn't need to ask this question. She looked at her father and even forgot to drink the milk. Her surprised and worshipful eyes told her father the answer. "Daddy is very powerful." She held the milk bottle in her left hand and swung her right hand. She tried hard to describe. "Daddy is more powerful than Brother Snorlax's daddy." Brother Snorlax was a little hero like Superman and Spider-Man in a domestic cartoon that she watched some time ago. Snorlax's father was a famous kendo martial artist. Hearing his daughter's praise, Yang Yi smiled, neither sad nor happy. In fact, what was shown on TV? Yang Yi's real swordsmanship was a killing skill. His sword was tricky and aimed at the vital points. It was not gorgeous at all, but no one who looked down on Yang Yi could survive. Of course, that swordsmanship was too fierce and not suitable for children. Therefore, what Yang Yi showed to she just now was the Wudong 8 Immortal sword technique that he learned from a drunken Taoist when he was perfecting his unique skill. It was one of the more interesting practical swordsmanship. "Do you want to learn it?" Yang Yi asked. "Yes," she responded crisply. The little girl only thought that it was good, but she never thought that she would be stepping on her father's pirate ship. Of course, after a while, she began to practice under her father's guidance. She understood. To learn swordsmanship, you must first understand the sword. We usually call this the sword head. This is the sword hilt, sword guard, sword body, sword spine, sword edge and sword tip. The sword edge and sword tip are more dangerous and less necessary. You must remember, never point them at others. When Yang Yi began to teach, he pretended to be very serious. "Stand properly." It was the first time that she saw her father's fierce appearance. She wanted to slack off just now, but she was immediately discovered by her father. He shouted at her, and she quickly stood in a half bow according to her father's instructions. The little girl felt wronged, but she still could not help but complain. "Daddy, my legs hurt." Let a 4-year-old girl hold a sword in a half bow. Although it was not a horse stance, how could she endure this kind of pain? It only took a few seconds for her to sway back and forth. Although Yang Yi was a little distressed, he still walked over to help she correct her posture. He said half sternly and half gently, "Stand properly. Just stand there for another 2 minutes." In order to train his daughter, Yang Yi naturally could not let she work as hard as he did before. He lowered the standard again and again until he was not sure whether it would be effective or not. But even so, she still could not hold on. After a while, she began to sway. She pouted and said coquettishly, "I can't do it. Is it not enough? 1 more minute. Hold on." Yang Yi found that he still could not pretend to be fierce under his daughter's coquettishness. He encouraged her softly. She is already very good. Come on." She still had a lot of potential. Although she was swaying, she still tried her best to hold on until the time that her father wanted her to hold on. "That's great. You really surprised me." Yang Yi was not stingy with his praise. The little girl was a little embarrassed. She felt that her energy was rising again. Next, Daddy will teach you the correct way to hold a sword. Yang-yi looked at his daughter's posture of holding the sword with both hands. He raised the long sword in his hand and said, "First is the full grip. Look at Daddy's hand. The 5 fingers of my right hand are like a fist. I have a stronger grip on the front part of the sword hilt. The sword is slightly at a right angle to my forearm." She naturally could not understand such a scholarly speech. She still needed Yang-yi to step forward and teach her step by step. This morning, he practiced 3 rounds of lunging and taught her 3 different ways to hold the sword. But even so, it still took him half an hour. After all, she was still too young. The little girl was so tired that she asked her father to carry her back. "Papa, when can she be as powerful as Papa?" Lying comfortably on her father's broad back, she stuck her little head out. Her ponytail hung down to her father's neck. It's still too early. However, as long as she works hard, she will definitely be better than Daddy. Yang-yi smiled and gave her hope. In fact, Shi's performance today was quite satisfactory and even pleasantly surprising to Yang-yi. Although she occasionally acted coquettishly, the little girl was not as delicate as Yang-yi imagined. As long as her father gave her a little encouragement, she could still grit her teeth and persevere through the lessons that her father required. Moreover, she studied very seriously and learned very quickly. She was a very smart little girl. Chapter 105. Move it here, it's about this position. Yang-yi directed the workers to move the black-painted piano to the side of the bar counter in the shop. A few days ago, there was a vacancy here for Shi's birthday party. Now, Yang-yi directly bought a piano to fill the gap. At the birthday party, Yang-yi showed a little of his skills, and Murphy's reaction was not too intense. This made Yang-yi more confident in his plan. Now, Yang-yi could finally buy a piano in the shop and secretly enjoy it. After all, the guitar was nothing. Piano and violin were his true loves. The pianos in this world were the same as those in Yang-yi's previous life, but the brand name was different. Yang-yi didn't know which one was better. So, he used the stupidest but also the most direct way, which was to buy an expensive one. The Theodore grand piano from the Rhine River was worth 860,000 yuan. It was already the best small grand piano that Yang-yi could buy in Jiangqing's piano shop. The concert level was too big to fit. Of course, there were more expensive grand pianos made in Switzerland that cost more than 1 million yuan. However, when Yang-yi tried it, he still felt that the tone was not as good as the Theodore. However, Yang-yi almost emptied his savings to spend 860,000 yuan. Fortunately, Chen Yiji's new album went platinum, so Yang-yi made a lot of money. Otherwise, with his income from last month's royalties, after paying the investment in Sahara online bookstore, there would be no money left. Of course, Tian Xiang didn't regret the bet that Yang-yi signed with him. Because of the song Long Time No See, Chen Yiji's new album also sold many copies in the mainland. His sales not only reached the platinum standard for Cantonese albums, but also far exceeded this number. It was indeed a little expensive for a piano to be placed in a coffee shop for more than 800,000 yuan, but it was hard to buy what one wanted, wasn't it? She was very curious about this huge object. While the workers were installing and debugging it, she walked around her father. She couldn't help but pull her father's hand and let him lower his head. She whispered in his ear, "Papa, I know what this is." "What is it?" Yang-yi asked, amused. "It's Qin. I've seen it at Mom's workplace before. But Mom's isn't that big." She tried her best to gesture to her father with her little hands. "It's just this long and this big. Mom can play it. Mama is amazing." Yang-yi looked at his daughter's description and could roughly understand what she was talking about. He smiled and said, "No, your mother should be called an electronic piano, and the one Dad bought today is called a piano." Cici looked at her father in confusion. She couldn't understand the difference between the two. "Why is Mom called the shop owner Qin? What's a shop owner Qin?" She turned on the 10,000 whys mode again. Well, it's an electronic piano. Young E corrected his daughter's pronunciation and said, "It can only play with electricity, so it's called an electronic piano." She knew about electricity, because her father repeatedly told her not to touch those sockets, because electricity was terrible, and it would eat she. She understands, the little girl said innocently. Is it because the piano is made of steel that it can play with sound? Steel had become a driving force like electricity. Well, Young E didn't know how to answer his daughter's imagination. He really didn't know why a piano was called a piano. Although this thing was made of steel, most of it was still wood. Young E had an idea and explained, "No, because a piano is made of wood and steel, but because there was already a xylophone, it was called a piano." She nodded, half understanding. Then she asked, "Is Mom's piano better?" Young E probably couldn't figure out Shishi's train of thought. She thought that an electronic piano used electricity, and all things that used electricity were very magical and powerful, such as a television. So, an electronic piano should be very powerful too. Young Yi's evaluation standard was, of course, different. He corrected, "No, the sound quality of an electronic piano can't be compared to a piano, because a piano is the most original sound of a keyboard instrument." At this moment, the tuner sent by the piano house had also helped to adjust the sound. He sat on a leather stool and tried to play a song, using his ears to judge the pitch. Shishi was also watching with rapt attention. The clear and gentle sound of the piano fascinated the little girl. Young E looked at his daughter absent-mindedly. He didn't know if she knew how to appreciate it, but it seemed that, looking at her intoxicated expression, he liked it very much. After the song ended, Shishi came back to her senses and agreed with her father. Well, Papa's piano is still the best. After the piano was set up and adjusted, Young E sent the people from the piano house out. At this time, Uncle Lou from the bicycle repair shop next to him said in a loud voice, "Young E, what big thing did you buy this time?" "I added a piano to the shop." Young E smiled. "Piano?" A tall, thin boy with shoulder-length hair, who was waiting for the bicycle to be repaired at Uncle Lou's shop, raised his head in surprise and looked at Young E thoughtfully. "Hey, I don't see many customers in your shop. Why did you spend so much money to buy such an expensive thing?" Uncle Lou nagged, worrying about Young E. These neighbors were all very ordinary local people. They were a little talkative and liked to gossip about their families, but in fact everyone was very kind. Usually if they needed help they would shout and no one would refuse. After a few words with Uncle Lou, Young E returned to the shop. He cleaned the footprints and dust left behind when he moved the piano. Shishi, on the other hand, was bursting with curiosity. She climbed onto a leather stool and looked at the black and white piano keys first. Then she stretched out a small hand and pressed it. Dong dong dong, do do do. Different keys had different sounds when pressed. Shishi felt as if she had found a new toy. She was very happy to touch it. At this time a person appeared outside the door. He poked his head into the shop and called softly, "Hello, boss." Young E came from behind with a mop and said from a distance, "Sorry, the shop is not open for business today. Look, the sign hasn't been hung out yet." But when he came closer, Young E saw that it was the long-haired young man from Uncle Lou's repair shop. "Boss, I'm sorry. I don't want to drink coffee. Sorry to bother you for a few minutes." The long-haired young man looked at Young E, who was as tall as a black tower. He was a little embarrassed, but he still mustered up the courage to say, "My name is Lin Muan. I'm a freelance musician." Lin Muan, and well, listening to the very common pronunciation of Mandarin, Young E could probably tell that the other party should be from Cantonese. Of course, he was not from Harbor City. Young people from Harbor City would not come to the mainland to make a living. Young E looked at Lin Muan. He felt that the other party was a little embarrassed. He did not look like a star. There were many kinds of musicians. There were those who were high and mighty, those who were stars, those who were depressed and mingled in bars, and those who sang under the overpass. Those who liked music and treated music as their life could actually be called musicians. Lin Mu, and should be the third kind. In his introduction, he also said that he was now a resident singer in a bar. What do you want? Yang Yi asked, puzzled. Sorry, I want to ask if you need a pianist here. It's a person who specializes in playing music for customers. Coffee shops usually have one, which makes the atmosphere in the shop thicker. I can play the piano and I can also sing. Lin Mu, and tried hard to promote himself. However, Yang Yi did not want to hire a pianist. He bought a piano more for his own entertainment. So he smiled apologetically and said, You just heard the owner of the bicycle repair shop say that my coffee shop actually doesn't have many customers in a day, so there is no need to hire a pianist. Okay then. Lin Mu and was disappointed, but he still bowed to Yang Yi gracefully and said, Sorry to disturb you. Looking at Lin Mu An's back, Yang Yi was a little dazed. Did I forget something? Oh right, I forgot that sentence. Please tell me your story. Well, just kidding, Yang Yi really did not have the idea of hiring a pianist in the shop. Note 1. As for the origin of the name of the piano, Xiaohan looked it up. There are two versions. One is what Yang Yi said, and the other is that in the Republic of China, the piano was originally called the Yangqin, but at that time the Ministry of Education wanted to unify the name. They wanted to start with the material of the Yangqin, but they felt that the Yangqin was too old-fashioned, so they called it the piano. Chapter 106. Yang Yi's new book, Yu Zue, was finally released on July 20th under the constant calls of his fans. At the same time, the new book Desert Wolf King by Iron Army Network's Bullet Scar was also updated. Judging from the publicity momentum of Iron Army Network in the past week, when the two met, one was bound to be injured. People who didn't mind watching the fun flooded the two websites, wanting to see who was better. However, just as the Water Army hired by Iron Army Network was about to flood into Chiyu to cause trouble, Chiyu was indifferent, as if he didn't care about this showdown at all. He didn't even have the intention to respond. As for why, it had to be a few days ago. Changzi got the first volume of Yang Yi's manuscript called Rookie Mobilization, a few days earlier than the readers. After reading it, Changzi's first feeling was relief. Yang Yi, this guy, finally learned how to break chapters. The manuscript of more than 200,000 words was divided into 55 chapters, with each chapter having more than 4,000 words. The standard made Changzi and the other editors in the editorial department feel very comfortable reading it. That's right. What's the difference between writing a web novel and a salted fish? According to Yang Yi's request, Changzi set it to 3 updates a day. Every day he would update more than 10,000 words. Not only could he satisfy the fans' desire to read, but he also wouldn't update too much in one day like Soldier's Assault, which ended in less than 2 weeks. Changzi's second feeling was that Yang Yi was still Yang Yi. The writing style was still as delicate as before, and the story design was still firmly grasping people's hearts as before. What was more wonderful was the portrayal of the characters. Changzi felt that Yang Yi wasn't writing a virtual character, but a real person. The first novel was very wonderful, and according to Yang Yi's feedback, he planned to write Yu Zue into a long novel with a total of 8 volumes, reaching more than 2 million words. The number of words and the content was wonderful. This was the rhythm of a web novel. Although he still hoped that Yang Yi would continue to write military literature to gain popularity for Qiaoyu, he could not change Yang Yi's decision. After confirming that Yang Yi's novel was as wonderful as before, chief editor Hu De decided that on the day the new book was uploaded, Qiaoyu would promote Yang Yi's Yu Zue through all channels. Therefore, when the long-awaited fans of the book wanted to find the location of Yu Zue, they were pleasantly surprised to find that it was everywhere. On every page of the book, they could find an advertisement for Yu Zue. Clicking on any of them would lead them straight to the page of the book. Wait, who can tell me why Yu Zue appeared to be under the city column? Before he even started reading, The book review and comment section had already exploded with comments. The editors of Iron Arm Com were also on high alert. They gathered in the conference room and clicked on the homepage of Yuzue on the big screen. But when they saw the book appear in the city section, they were dumbfounded. How is that possible? Didn't Yang-e want to go against us? Why don't you write military novels instead of urban novels? Fishball was young and hot-blooded. He could not keep his cool and shouted in disbelief. In fact, they forgot that they were the ones who clamored for a fight. Iron Army Network and Yang-e had never responded. The editor of Iron Army Network was also two-faced. When they saw that the editor of Iron Army Network had made such a big mistake, they hid all the information about the book, including the introduction of the content. Seeing this, Ling Yun Juejian was at a loss. He seemed to have punched the air. Wouldn't they become the laughingstock of others if they fought in the arena? When your own player went to the boxing field and found that his opponent didn't even appear, he would look back and find that his opponent was a swimmer. Boss Ling Yun, Duan called to ask if we still want to attack this book. We can't use the words we prepared before. An editor next to him covered the microphone and whispered to Ling Yun Juejin. That was the Internet Water Army hired by Iron Army Network. Of course, not all the editors knew about it. Ling Yun Juejian had applied for secret funding from the bosses. Ling Yun Juejian's face was a little pale. He was silent for a while, but he still gritted his teeth and said, "Attack, let them think of a solution. The money has been spent, I want to see a splash." Mu Yuqing was a little busy during the day. Several people in charge of this project, including him, had gone on a business trip to Shanghai. They had to have a meeting with guests to explain the framework of their program. After the meeting they had to eat and socialize. Therefore, Mu Yuqing only had time to take out his phone when he returned to the hotel in the middle of the night. He logged into Iron Army Network to read Yang-e's new book. City. Mu Yuqing saw this difference at first glance. However, he could still accept it. After all, compared to military literature, he preferred urban literature that was close to reality. Anyway, he had to support all of Yang-e's books. Therefore, he tipped a league master first before reading the book. Yuzue was promised 3 updates a day, and it really was 3 updates a day. Mu Yuqing finished reading it in a short while. He felt like he was scratching an itch through his boots and was not satisfied at all. However, it could not be helped. The author, Yang-e, acted as if he never existed. No matter how lively the readers were or how much money they tipped him, he still did things his own way. He updated according to his original plan and wrote the plot according to his own ideas. Therefore, the guys in the book review section gradually developed a habit. They pretended that Yang-e could see it, and they continued to ridicule and comment on it to themselves. Mu Yuqing did not have any new content to read, so he clicked on the book review section to see how those guys were complaining. However, Mu Yuqing frowned very quickly. Why is the book review section so chaotic? Some were scolding Yang-e for not writing military literature. Changing to urban literature was a betrayal to their readers. Some were saying that Yang-e's new book was a scam. It was not as good as the previous Soldier's Assault and Drawing Sword. Whoever wants to read The Police can read it. I'm not going to entertain you anyway. I'm giving up. There were also some who were angrily complaining about blind recommendations. The strong winds from all channels had given a novel that they did not know anything about. It was a scam to the reader's money and unfair to the other authors. Mu Yuqing saw that many familiar names were involved. They were affected and started to complain about the content of Yang-e's new book. However, there were even more first-rate accounts that he had never seen before stirring up trouble. Hee. Mu Yuqing had been in the IT industry for a long time and was used to it. He could tell what was going on at a glance. He sneered and pressed the keyboard on his mobile phone wildly. He used his mobile phone to post a long review. Get out of here. Readers who like Yang-e, please be patient with the author. Although it was not as convenient as a computer, Mu Yuqing still relied on his good memory to list some examples. Yang Yi is still the original Yang Yi. This book, Yu Zue, may seem plain at the beginning, but it's not simple at all. Although our protagonist Yu Zue's presence is a little low, he still has the most unique character among all of us. Yang Yi's protagonists have never been ordinary people. Think about it. Su Sanduo is dull and timid, but he can explode with amazing energy. Li Yunlong is humble, cunning, and invincible. Yu Zue may be slick, lazy, and unmotivated, but according to my understanding of the author, this Yu Zue will definitely grow into an indomitable figure in the future. Isn't the process of his growth interesting? In fact, the first 3 chapters of Yu Zue did not describe much about the protagonist. The reason Mu Yuqing could analyze Yu Zue's character was the result of his serious reading of the book. The police are also soldiers who protect the country in another sense. Although Yang Yi has come to the urban column, I think he is also writing military literature in another sense. I appeal to readers who like Yang Yi to not be anxious. Give Yang Yi some time. I believe that he can create a new and very interesting story for us. As for the Internet Water Army, please stop. Your ugly faces are too obvious. Don't think that we don't know that you were sent by a certain military network. Mu Yuqing's post was posted a little late, but it was still seen by many readers. Their anger gradually subsided, and they followed Mu Yuqing's post to the top of the page. Although it was inevitable that some military fans would be lost, Yu Zue was just the beginning. Who could be sure of the future results? Chapter 107. The 23rd of July quietly arrived. Murphy originally still had work to do today, but she asked Mo Xiaowan to cancel it. She had been in her room picking out clothes since she came back at noon. She spent a few hours picking out clothes and was still hesitating about what makeup to put on. She definitely couldn't go without makeup. Although she was beautiful without makeup, she still lacked luster. Murphy was worried that Yang Yi wouldn't like it if she put on too much makeup. This guy was rigid. He had even mentioned before that Murphy should remove her makeup before being intimate with Shi. Of course, that was in the past. But light makeup was even more difficult to grasp. Should she put on eyeliner? Should she put on eyeshadow? Should she put on contact lenses? Should she put on highlights? Which color should she use for lipstick? Should she put on lip gloss? By the time she was in a dilemma, the sky was already dark. Not only that, Murphy herself couldn't make up her mind, so she even called Mo Xiaowan over to give her advice. Mo Xiaowan was stuffed with a mouthful of dog food and looked listless. After struggling for more than an hour, she finally said helplessly, "Sister, you're going to watch the concert, not find a place with no one around to go on a date. In the end, don't you still want a coat, mask, sunglasses and hat? What's the use of wearing nice clothes and putting on beautiful makeup now?" Murphy pursed her lips and didn't say anything. It wasn't until Yang Yi drove Shi downstairs that Murphy received a call. She hurriedly touched up the last of her makeup and carried her bag downstairs. "And this bag?" Mo Xiaowan called out to her cousin in disappointment and handed over the bag that contained her disguise equipment. When Murphy arrived downstairs, Yang Yi had already parked the car at the usual place. Murphy didn't go to the back seat. Instead, she opened the door of the front passenger seat and sat in it. "Oh, that's Shi's seat." The little girl realized that she was sitting alone in the safety seat at the back and grumbled unhappily. Murphy did not respond. She gently bit her light red lower lip and pretended not to care as she fastened her seatbelt. But in reality, she was hoping that Yang Yi would give her a review. It would be best if it was a 5-star review. However, Yang Yi just glanced at it and turned his head away. This made Murphy suddenly feel disappointed. Little did she know that Yang Yi had been staring at her through the car window. Murphy was wearing a blue ink-printed linen dress today. This kind of sleeveless dress was originally suitable for Murphy's tall and slender figure. Paired with a thin white cardigan, although it covered her slender shoulders, It couldn't cover her slender arms and thin waist. If it wasn't for her slightly mature curly hair that was parted in the middle, perhaps people would only think that she was a 17 or 18-year-old girl with this figure. No one would think that she was already 30 years old, and that she was a mother who had given birth to a child. Of course, when talking about a person's beauty, it wasn't just based on their appearance and figure, but also their temperament. The blue ink-printed dress wasn't messy, but instead looked natural and graceful. Murphy walked over. From afar, she looked extraordinary, and from up close, she was even more ethereal. When Murphy got into the car, Yang-yi felt that when he turned his head to look at her, he almost felt suffocated. She already had a face that could captivate birds and geese. Today, with a light makeup, she looked like a fairy that had descended to the mortal world. And because of the radiance brought about by her mood, she was so beautiful that Yang-yi didn't dare to take another look. Having lived 2 lives, Yang-yi swore that Murphy was definitely the most beautiful and fairy-like woman he had ever seen. If he still couldn't bear to leave and took a few more looks, Yang-yi was worried that he would be rude to the beauty. But a woman's mind wasn't what he thought at all. Don't you have to hide anything today? Just like this, walk in directly. Yang-yi gestured with his hand. His big hand covered his mouth like a mask. Murphy turned her head away in a fit of pique. No, I don't want to. She sat alone in the back with her mother's 2 bags. She looked at her father for a while, then looked at her mother for a while. The little girl was also unhappy. She raised her voice and said angrily, "You're all ignoring me, I'm going to be angry." "No, why would we ignore you?" "Yeah, we're done talking, so we came to talk to you." When her daughter spoke, Murphy couldn't care less about being angry with Yang-yi. The 2 of them hurriedly comforted their daughter. "Sitting in front, I can still see you." Murphy adjusted the rearview mirror and just happened to see her daughter's eyes. She winked at her daughter. Note 1. She seemed to have found a novelty. She also forgot about her unhappiness just now and winked at her mother. The little girl didn't know how to turn a blind eye. Her winking expression made Yang-yi and Murphy couldn't help but laugh softly. Murphy was angry just now. Now that her anger had subsided, she said to Yang-yi, "I still have to disguise myself. Otherwise, how would I dare to go to a place with so many people? Later in the car I have to wear a mask or something." Yang-yi was about to start the car when he heard Murphy's words. He suddenly had an idea. "Actually, you don't have to wear a windbreaker and a mask on such a hot day." Murphy looked at Yang-yi in confusion. "Where's your makeup bag?" Yang-yi stretched out his hand to Murphy. "I'll help you change your makeup. I guarantee that your fans won't recognize you when they see you." Murphy looked at him in disbelief. "You even know how to put on makeup?" Yang-yi smiled faintly and said, "Of course, I used to be in the army. You know that I was in the special forces, right? I often had to carry out some special missions. This skill of disguise is something that we have to learn." Of course, this was nonsense. Yang-yi was bullying Murphy, an honest person. The special forces did no more than ordinary soldiers, and their skills were also good. But in the past, Yang-yi had never learned the art of disguise. He did know how to apply camouflage. The art of disguise was learned by Yang-yi in the Hitman organization in his previous life. Of course, he couldn't say this out loud. Murphy was skeptical. In the end, she still foolishly handed the makeup bag in the backseat to Yang-yi. Girls were naturally interested in makeup, and she was no exception. She opened her big eyes curiously and looked at him without saying a word. "Come over here." Yang-yi rummaged through Murphy's makeup bag and found a few tools. Murphy was actually a little worried. But when she saw that Yang-yi was holding the eyebrow pencil in the right position, she steeled her heart and moved her body towards Yang-yi. She raised her face and closed her eyes nervously. "Don't be nervous, relax a little." Yang-yi gently held Murphy's chin with his left hand and said softly. Actually, his heart was beating wildly. Especially when he saw Murphy's pink and moist lips after applying lip honey. He had the urge to lower his head and kiss them. Murphy still had her eyes closed. She made a vague sound with her nose, but she didn't seem to have any intention of relaxing. Instead, the light makeup on her face couldn't hide the 2 red spots that were getting brighter and brighter. If he kisses us, should we push him away? Note 1. This is against the traffic rules. Everyone don't learn from her. Chapter 108. Stealing a kiss didn't happen. Yang-yi wasn't a gentleman, but he cared a lot about Murphy's feelings. What if she got angry? Speaking of which, Cece was watching from the back of the car with her big, sparkling eyes. Even if they could be intimate, it wasn't the right time. Murphy kept her eyes closed. She accepted Yang-yi's disguise in a complicated mood. She heard her daughter's screams from time to time, which made her feel uneasy and curious. Okay, take a look at the mirror. Yang-yi's magnetic voice sounded in her ears. Then Yang-yi gently pressed her shoulders to help her sit up and let go. Murphy quickly opened her eyes and took out the mirror she used to touch up her makeup. She wanted to see what Yang-yi had done to her. It's not Mom, she said weakly. If she hadn't seen it from the beginning to the end, it would have been difficult for Shishi to digest such a change. But even so, she still doubted her eyes when she saw her mother's current appearance. That's right. Was she still herself in the mirror? Murphy's eyes showed a surprised look. Her eyebrows looked thicker, but that was okay. The main thing was that her eyes had undergone a strange change under Yang-yi's special eyeliner. They looked completely different from before. Of course, she wasn't ugly. Yang-yi's makeup skills were godly. Not only that, Murphy found that the skin on her face and neck had become a little darker, as if she had gone to Africa. The shape of her nose and mouth had also changed slightly under the concealment of the high-gloss powder and eyeshadow. What's this? Murphy touched a black spot under her eye. She thought it was a mark left by Yang-yi's hand by mistake. This is called a beauty mark, Yang-yi chuckled and said. I drew it with eyeliner, eyeshadow, and your eyeliner. Murphy really wanted to kneel down in front of Yang-yi. Not only could a grown man casually name a girl's makeup products, but he could also draw beautiful makeup. If it wasn't for Yang-yi's explanation, she really wanted to knock open Yang-yi's head to see what was inside. Is that all? Shishi, can you tell that it's Mom? Murphy turned her head and asked her daughter. She was still a little uncertain. After all, this was no small matter. If his identity was discovered, it would be troublesome. Shishi looked at her mom's face with a conflicted expression. She pouted and said, I don't think she looks like Mom. Then she had an idea. She covered her eyes with her hands, then giggled and said, If you can't see, then it's Mom. Murphy breathed a sigh of relief. If her daughter couldn't recognize her, then there shouldn't be a problem, right? But at this moment, Yang-yi thought of something. He asked Murphy to move her head over and tied up her hair. Yang-yi tied Shishi's hair almost every day. He often changed the style, so not only was he familiar with it, but he also had a hairband in his pocket. Murphy's long and curly hair was combed by Yang-yi, leaving only 2 strands of curly hair hanging down on her temples. The rest were gathered above her ears and tied into a ponytail at the back of her head. The ponytail was buttoned inside. Then he braided the ponytail into 3 braids. Then the 3 braids were gently pulled, giving off a fluffy feeling. Finally, Yang-yi gently scratched Murphy's bangs with his fingers, making the original hairstyle look a little like air bangs. Of course, it had not been cut, so it was slightly thick. Look! Yang-yi woke up Murphy, who was blushing and didn't dare to open her eyes. Murphy looked at herself in the mirror again. She didn't dare to recognize herself in the mirror. That youthful hairstyle and pretty rosy face made her look no different from a girl in her early 20s. Murphy couldn't help but hold her cheeks in surprise and joy. She recognized this hairstyle. She said to her mom as if she was showing off a treasure, Mom, let me tell you, Papa used to tie Shishi's hair. It's like this hair. Haha, Shishi, isn't your father awesome? In just a while he changed your mom. Yang Yi didn't take it seriously. He laughed and teased his daughter. It's not a new mom. She wasn't so gullible. She pouted and said, it's still my mom but she looks different. She still likes the original mom. It doesn't matter. After we finish watching the concert tonight, your mom can wipe it with makeup remover and return to her original appearance. Yang Yi reached out to rub the little girl's head. Aya, my hair is messy. She protested. Murphy looked at Yang Yi playing with his daughter with a complicated expression. In fact, her heart was brimming with happiness, whether it was just now when Yang Yi held her face or now. However, she was a little flustered because Yang Yi had given her too many surprises during this period of time. With such frequent changes, Murphy felt that it was a little too fast, and she was a little flustered because she lacked a sense of security. However, there was no time to think too much. Yang Yi activated Dominant Wolf. They had to hurry to the music hall of Popular People House. Although they were in the same district, after the makeup and hair braiding, time became tight. Outside the music hall, a short line was waiting for the ticket check. Most of the fans had already gone in early. In a corner a little further away, Yang Yi held Shi in his left hand and waved at Murphy, who was hiding in the shadows with his right hand. They're here, don't be afraid. Yang Yi said with a smile. I took a look, there aren't any reporters waiting to take pictures. The concert was about to start, so the paparazzi following Chen Yijie wouldn't be waiting at the entrance. They would be waiting at the backstage entrance. Murphy pressed down on the brim of her hat and suppressed her wildly beating heart. She muttered as she walked out. It's all your fault, you won't even let me wear a mask. If I'm found out, it's all your fault. They successfully stood in the line for the ticket check, and soon there were people lining up behind them. Murphy was so nervous that she stuck close to Yang Yi, their shoulders bumping from time to time. Hey you! Suddenly, a girl behind them curiously peeked her head over. Murphy was so scared that the blood drained from her face. Fortunately, under the dim light of the street lamps outside, no changes could be seen. But at this time, a big hand reached over and held her cold and soft hand in his hand. The warm feeling left de Maufais with a little bit of strength to maintain the faint smile on her face. Oh, nothing, I thought you were a friend of mine. The girl apologized to Murphy in embarrassment. It turned out to be a misunderstanding. That's very impolite of you. The girl's companion helped to scold her. I'm also very embarrassed. When I saw her back just now I thought she was Sam but she wasn't. But she is also very beautiful. Maufais didn't continue to listen to their whispers. The big stone in her heart was finally put down. But Yang Yi didn't let go of her hand, as if he had forgotten. Murphy hesitated for a moment and didn't struggle. It felt good to hold hands in the crowd like this. You're tuning in to the Whispers of Romance YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.